Hi, friends. Taylor from Doomed to Fail. We're the podcast that brings you history's most notorious disasters and epic failures twice a week, every week. And surprise, I'm here just to drop one more omnibus-ish re-release and all four of our Olympic episodes in one long episode if you want to listen to it this way, because today is July 26th, and this is the day that the Paris Olympics starts. So join us. We have episode 1 on the history of the Olympics, how you get into Olympics, and how Pierre de Coubertin brought them back. Episode 2 on the 1936 Olympics in Berlin. Episode 3 on the 1972 Munich Massacre, and episode 4 on the 1996 Atlanta bombing and Richard Jewell's the accusation of Richard Jewell. So hope you enjoy. Here's to a peaceful, sportsmanlike Olympics, and we will see you on the other side. Thank you so much. If you have questions or things you want us to cover, we're at doomedtofailpod@gmail.com. Please tell your friends.
In the matter of the people of the state of California versus Orenthal James Simpson, case number BA096.
And so, my fellow Americans, ask not what your country can do for you. Ask what you can do for your country.
And we are live and recording. Welcome to Doomed to Fail, the twice weekly podcast hosted by myself, Fars, and Taylor about things that are doomed to fail. Hi, Taylor. How are you?
I am good. How are you? That was a great intro. I got feedback from my husband that was very like, your intro sucks. Do better.
Was that a better intro?
That was, for sure.
Should I ask Juan to rate it?
Yeah, maybe write us one or something.
Yeah.
Gonna cry about it.
Yeah, Juan. Why don't you do one better? How about that?
Yeah.
Yeah. Make your own twice a week podcast about items that are doomed to fail, and then you do your. I'm derailing. Okay. Anyways, so happy Sunday.
Happy Sunday. Happy Father's Day to all the fathers out there.
And dog fathers count. So happy Father's Day to me.
Yes.
And Juan, who I just railed against. Happy Father's Day. It's my victim. Okay. Anyways, so we are off to another topic, and I think Taylor, I go first this time.
I thought I did, but you can. I don't care. Because we did last week. You went first. You did Sarah, then I did Andrew Jackson. So I go first.
You go.
Okay. Okay, well, now I feel like I'm not ready. Now I feel kind of thrown into this. Cool.
You were gonna go first anyways.
I know, I'm just kidding. Okay. I as I told you last week, I'm going to do a 4-part series starting today. And this should be an entire podcast on its own, and I'm sure that it is because there's like 1,000 different stories to tell about this thing. But I'm going to tell you some stories about an event that is about to happen in Paris. You know what I'm talking about?
Oh, Olympics. Olympics.
The Olympics,
Right.
indeed. So today, let's talk about the ancient Olympics, what they looked like, who was there, and then the revival in the late 1800s, early 1900s, how you get in the Olympics, and then what's going on in Paris right now as they're getting ready to host the Olympics starting in July. Then part 2 will be Olympics, but now Hitler is here, which will be pre-1950 Olympics. So I'm going to tell the story of the 1936 Berlin Olympics and some other anecdotes that happened between then and then. Part 3 will be, they're even more political. There's going to be civil rights involved. There's going to be the massacre at Munich involved, and that will get us from 1950 to 1980. And then part 4 will be about Los Angeles and the police, the Atlanta bombing. And honestly, I can't remember what that was about. So I'm excited to try to remember that. I don't remember at all who did that or why.
Richard Jewell, was that his name? Yeah.
Was that him, or was it the guy who we thought did it?
That's the guy that we thought did it, but really it was a white supremacist who is now at the Supermax ADX in Florence, Colorado.
Nice.
I know that because I was like, I started like looking up weird prison stories, and I found out what ADX Florence was. I was like, this sounds like hell on earth. Who would possibly be here? And I was like,
Awesome.
okay, yeah, that makes sense. That makes sense. That makes sense. All the
We'll
names
talk about that
list.
in part 4. There's also going to be some fun stories. We'll talk about the Jamaican bobsled team because that's a delight, and like all the things. So we'll talk about little things, but then some big mean stories. But today, let's start us off with what the Olympics were, where they were, and then how they were done. Cool.
Sweet.
Do you enjoy the Olympics, Faris?
You're gonna be shocked to hear that I do not.
Oh my God, I love them. And I know it's stupid and I don't care. I cry every time. I'm gonna talk more about that later. So, in ancient Greece, the Olympic Games took place every 4 years. 4 year time span is called an Olympiad. If you ever want to put your life into those quadrants, you can say, I went to high school for an Olympiad. I think you can say that because it's 4 years.
You are a total nerd.
Don't you sound cooler to that? Anyway, they took place every 4 years from 776 BC to 339 AD, so a long time. They were mostly a religious event. Like, yes, there were sports, but it was had a religious context, and it was to celebrate Zeus. And there's a few myths on like why they do this for Zeus and like why this came up. But essentially, like the Greek and Roman gods, they're always like wrestling each other and fighting and trying to figure out who's the strongest. So sports were, the same thing for humans. And all free Greek males could compete. So it was all dudes. They had to be free, so they couldn't be a slave. But anyone from like a poor person working in a shop to a king or an emperor could compete. And eventually they would become the Pan-Hellenic Games, which means like more of Greece, but this is basically thinking Olympics in Olympia. Women had their own games. They were called the Herrera Games, and they would have one race every time the Olympics was done. And it was a 190-meter race, and it was divided into groups based on age. So like you would win based on your age group, just like the 5K that I was in that did not win.
But
Make
that
sense?
you did participate in and the newspaper did not recognize.
Indeed.
Got it.
Thank you for remembering. So the one thing that women could do is they could own a chariot. And when a chariot won a race, the owner was the one who got the prize. And so in 396 BC and 392 BC, Caniska, the daughter of a Spartan king, did win the victory wreath, which is like an olive wreath, those 2 years. So she's the only woman who won in the ancient Olympics. And it's because she owned a chariot, and that was something that she was allowed to do. So there were games like all over Greece. These people were sporty, like I said. The most common one was Olympia. So now they have like excavated stadiums that could hold 40,000 people, like the big stadium that they had there. It's also where the great statue of Zeus, which was one of the seven wonders of the ancient world, was as well. So it sounds like it was pretty fun, pretty awesome there. They had a lot of stuff, huge stadiums. They probably had a ton of infrastructure. It was like a big party for Zeus. Obviously, they're like slaughtering all these animals to Zeus, but really that means it's a barbecue,
Let's
you
get
know?
meat.
Yeah. Everyone's eating. There's like vendors outside selling stuff like dumb t-shirts, like you get at a concert. Probably
That
scalping
sounds fun.
tickets. Yeah. So all this stuff was happening. They're probably tailgating in some way as well. The stadium in Olympia would be rebuilt a few times during like the 1,000 years of the ancient Olympics. And when it wasn't a stadium, it was a wheat field because Olympia wasn't really populated except during that time. So they would grow wheat in the field and then harvest it and then have the Olympics again every Olympiad, which is how long?
4 years.
Perfect. So, and we're basically talking the Summer Olympics. So there was a book that I did not read that I was trying to find a book to read about this, and I found one on Amazon, but I couldn't find it at the library and like all the things. So I read some articles instead. But one of the reviews was like, this book on the ancient Olympics doesn't talk about the Winter Olympics at all. Like, do you think they were fucking skiing in Greece 1,000 years ago? 2,000 years ago? 3,000? No. What are you talking about?
Yeah, I
They
guess if
weren't.
it's invented in Greece, then it doesn't make sense.
There's no like bobsled. There's no luge in ancient Greece. It's just like obviously that I'll talk about when the Winter Games came, but we're talking Summer Olympics. We're not talking
Right.
winter.
And all honestly, it's really the Summer Olympics that we're excited about. Like the winter is like whatever.
But winter has figure skating, and that's always fun. And
Yeah, the figure
speed
skating part
skating,
is fun. That's
also
true.
fun. Um, but but yeah, no, we're just talking Summer Olympics. Everyone who participated in the Olympics was naked, which seems hard. Like I don't have I have girl parts, but like if I'm not running with like seven sports bras on, it's really, really hard to run. So it feels like it'd be hard to run a race naked.
I don't know. I
You
mean,
tell
I
me.
could, I
You
could,
okay with it?
I think I'd be okay with it. I think I'd probably do better naked.
All right.
because
All
they'd
right.
want to like be out of eyesight as quickly as possible. So I'd run faster.
That's fair. Everyone's looking at you and you're like terrified, like running as fast as possible. I like that. That makes sense. So some of the things that started off in the ancient Olympics, some of the games that were played, there was wrestling, obviously, and boxing. There was something called the pancreaton, pancration. I didn't not look up how to say it. Pankration, which is both wrestling and boxing, and there are no rules. It's kind of like MMA, I feel like, but like really there are no rules. So some of the people who are like famous for being ancient people who were in this event, one guy, his name was Archeon. He was in the middle of this like wrestle punch battle and he was being strangled. I'm acting this out for you. He was being strangled with like one arm from the guy that was strangling him. Then Archeon took his hand and crushed the guy's foot. And the guy screaming out in pain, and he gave up, like raised the finger to like be like, I give up. And as soon as he did that, the guy died anyway. So he won postmortem.
The
Like
guy
he
who
won,
crushed the foot is the one who
died.
died.
Hmm.
Weird.
Like he took his last bit of strength to crush the foot and then he died. But he won because the guy had surrendered or like tapped out. Tapped out. One guy named Milan of Croatan, he was huge. He was like a famously huge guy. He would bring in his own cow when the Olympics started, like on his back. Like he would hold it like Paul Bunyan.
This
And
all sounds like bullshit.
would
This all sounds like weird Greek myth building.
he would hold the cow on his back and then he would eat the whole cow in one day just to prove how big and strong he was. Then he would drink 9 bottles of wine and then he'd go out and do this event. And then eventually when he was like 40, he couldn't do it anymore, which is fair. And he lost his last fight in the Olympics. But even though he lost, they like held him up and they were like, he's a champion. Like we really like, he's a legend. And then later, he died because he was trying to pull up a tree stump by himself with his bare hands, and he got tangled up in the tree and he got eaten by wolves. I don't know.
This is all this is all
That's
lies.
probably not
Like,
true,
you
but
know
it's
this is
fun.
all lies. Okay.
I know, but what a fun story.
Yeah, but
Like that's
you could
these guys that eat.
anybody could be anybody back then because whoever makes the most audacious stupid lie is like only I don't know. Whatever. We can move on.
I know, that's what makes it fun.
Yeah,
Yeah. Even if ancient history isn't true, you have to believe it.
yeah, I think that's the Dan Carlin thing.
Another guy named Sostris of Sion, his signature move was he would break fingers. So I feel like he'd be like, "Oh man, I don't want to go in there with that guy. He's gonna break my hand," you know? Um, so there was that. There was a long jump where you would hold weights that were like kind of like a curve, like a half circle with like a handle, and the weight would help you jump further, you know? So you would like throw yourself forward with the weight. That's how they would long jump. Does that make sense?
Would
You're
that
looking at me
work?
weird. Um, I did watch a recreation of it and it like kind of worked.
I feel like you're
So,
weighted down so you can't even get enough inertia.
but you're like throwing yourself with the weights. I feel like that would totally work. Yeah.
Do we know why they stopped doing it?
Well, they stopped doing the whole thing. So I'll tell you why they stopped doing the
Oh,
whole
okay.
thing. Yeah. So there were javelin and discus, which we still have today, chariot races. The very first Olympic game was probably the stadion, which is that 190-meter race. And that's where the word stadium comes from. So that 190-meter race was called the stadion. That's where we get the word stadium from.
But
There's also a pentathlon. And I think there's a modern pentathlon that is a little bit different because the ancient one was running, long jump, discus throw, javelin throw, and wrestling. I think we took out wrestling and added something else in the pentathlon. But there's that. People actually, I mean, actually and obviously died in these Olympic Games, whether it was from, exhaustion or being beat up or being murdered or whatever. Um, and technically, the Greeks invented sports medicine because they had a lot of people to take care of after these, you know.
yeah, of course.
Imagine all the shins. Other countries weren't there, obviously, but it was just like different Greek city-states like against each other. So there's a lot of like nationalism, like there's now, like you're excited for your country. Another thing is like when you were running races, it wasn't to break records, it was just to win. It's probably because you couldn't like accurately time something, you know?
I mean, yeah, there's no photo finish. You're not gonna like break
Yeah.
it down to the seconds or milliseconds, really.
Yeah. Sometimes emperors would do it. So a little bit toward the end of the ancient Olympic Games, Emperor Augustus held a revival, and King Herod from the Bible, he helped pay for it. So it's happening around then. You'll remember that Nero wanted to win everything, and he would win a bunch. He won a chariot race, even though he fell off his chariot.
I mean, he's a
So
hero.
good for him. So obviously, like he did a bunch of it. But the ancient games stopped in 393 because Theodosius the first, or maybe his son, they're not 100% sure, just said cut it out. It was probably because like polytheism was going out of fashion and it was a thing for Zeus. Also, the temple burned down, so they just like stopped doing it around then. And there were still like games around the area, but nothing like the Olympics. Like hundreds of thousands of people would come to these games to watch them, to sell their things. It was like a huge deal, and they stopped doing it around 393 AD. Um, so let's talk about the modern Olympics for a little bit. So, like I said, I love the Olympics. I think they're super fun. They're almost impossible to watch because like cable stations will have them, but they like some of them will have commentary and some of them won't, and they'll be at weird times. And it's just like they make it as hard as humanly possible to watch them on TV.
Let me ask you, Taylor, what do you love about them?
I like a sporting event. I like stories of people who work really, really hard all their lives for like their one thing and then they get it. And I like the part where all of the countries come out and they're all dressed differently and they're all like really excited and happy to be there, really proud. And when I like watching the medal count. I do the whole thing. I like watching the medal count. I think that's really exciting. I'm just happy for people who have like something to do.
Yeah,
Does that
that's
even make
fair.
sense? I don't know. I just like I think it's fun that people get together and do a thing. And then like as we're going to talk about in the next month, we can't just get together and have a good time because people are terrible. But if we could, how fun would that be?
I mostly like the things that are fun and cool to watch. Like, I think, like that figure skating is incredible. I think that the gymnastics, it is always incredible to watch that. But
Hmm.
I also think about like the people who've spent like 15, 20 years becoming the best at something kind of useless.
I mean,
Like the curling people or like the archery people, where I'm like, you're never going to be on a cereal box. You're never going to. How are you going to turn this in? Like, you could have literally just learned a skill in that time.
no, I get it. But like, then what? They'd be like the best accountant at their accounting firm? Who cares?
Well, no, I just look at
At
it from
least
the
they have a
perspective
gold
of
medal.
it sucks that somebody could become the best at something that is kind of useless and leaves them high and dry, sort of. You know?
I know, but I'm laughing because I'm like, yeah, but like, I'm not the best at anything.
Well, I mean,
Like, if I, I'm not
I'm
gonna be
not
like
gonna agree with you.
I'm the best at like one random ass sport. Like, that's really cool.
But the other thing, Taylor, is like I look at basketball in the Olympics, and I just do not understand that because it's supposed to be amateur. It's supposed to be
Hmm.
amateur sports. That's the whole
Yeah.
point of the Olympics. And then the
Hmm.
U.S. takes LeBron James, Steph Curry, like the greatest by leaps and bounds in the sport, and puts them on a team and calls it Team USA. And it's like, what is how is this amateur sports? Like these are the
Well, I think that they changed that in 1994, right? Let's talk about it later because we'll talk about the Dream Team. And I had really great CD that had a bunch of songs on it, including I think possibly a lot of songs by Will Smith on it. But they changed that rule. But it's amateurs on purpose, and I'm going to tell you who decided it should be amateurs. And then we can
yo, we
kind of
keep
go from there.
let's keep learning.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah. Because I agree. That that is weird. And also we like didn't win last time.
I don't remember. Yeah, like, I definitely don't watch the basketball stuff. I watch the ice skating and the anyways, go ahead. Yeah.
Um, So, okay, ancient Olympics done. Things are Romans, Greeks, empires, blah blah blah. They're not doing it anymore. So, modern Olympics. I did go to a Special Olympics opening ceremony in LA and I cried the entire time. It was lovely. It was so fun. Everyone was so excited. Stevie Wonder sang a song. Michelle Obama was there. It was great. And the
When
Kennedys
when was that?
do that. It was in Florence was a baby, so it must have been in 2015.
Wait, the Olympics were in LA when we were there?
The Special Olympics.
Oh, the Special Olympics. Okay,
The
got it.
Olympics are going to be in LA in 2028.
No
So
way.
the next Summer Olympics will be in LA. And
Oh,
we're
cool.
definitely going to something weird. Like something weird that you can't get tickets to. Like that you can get tickets to. Yeah,
Yeah. Okay. So that was the other thing I was going to say that like I am turned off by the Olympics. It feels like a luxury thing to attend. It feels like you
absolutely.
have to be like in the upper class to even consider attending.
I mean, especially if you travel, if I'm like, oh, I'm going to travel to Paris to go watch the Olympics, it's going to cost me so much more than it normally would to travel to Paris because of the Olympics, and then I have to like buy the tickets and stay in an expensive hotel and like blah, 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 blah.
Right.
I'm sure that like you can't get an Airbnb in Paris in July at the
Right.
moment. So,
Right.
yes, it's a very privileged thing to be able to go to for sure. And it's a privilege. I think there are some, obviously, like we've seen in films. I'm thinking of The Cutting Edge, but like, if your child wants to be an Olympian in something and they look good, if you keep doing it, it is such a time and money commitment. It's like crazy for a family, you know?
Yeah. Like I mean, yeah. Like if you wanted your kid to be a master figure
Hmm.
skater, like that's like yeah, we've all seen the Nancy Kerrigan, Tanya Harding movie.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Oh gosh, I didn't even think about that. I'm gonna put that on my list of things to talk about. So now it is 1894. And we are in France. And there is a dude. His name is Pierre de Coubertin. We'll call him Pierre. He's an aristocrat. He's a rich guy. He goes to boarding school. Most people at the boarding school go home, sometimes he stays there the whole time. He becomes pretty religious. And after he's done, he's like, okay, what do I do now with my life? He could pretty much do anything. He has a lot of money. And he goes to England like on vacation and he's like, oh, the people here are in much better physical shape than the French, and they work well together. And he attributes it to physical education. So he sees like people in England, uh, you know, playing sports and doing things as a team. And he's like, this will be helpful when there's a war that they already know how to work together. And we're not doing that in France. And we're like not prepared to work together in this way. So he goes back to France and tries to start like a physical education revival thing in France, but it doesn't really work out. But um, it does give him an idea to start the modern Olympics. So he's like, let's give people an opportunity to like work in a team, to train, to like be physically active, because it really wasn't that in France. That's why he did it. So there's a lot of back and forth, but he creates the International Olympic Committee, which is still around.
Wait, Taylor, are you
And
basically saying that from 300 whatever AD until the 1800s there was no Olympics?
yes,
That's wild. Okay.
yeah. I
And
mean,
it
it
was
was
a
like,
Frenchman that did it?
yeah,
Weird. Right.
because he was like, these French guys need to up their ante and start working out.
Yeah, like stop just having wine and cigarettes and baguettes and
Run with your
painting.
cigarettes.
Run with your cigarettes. There we go.
Get naked and run because you're embarrassed
The
until you're
old
not
Fars
embarrassed
move.
anymore. So the first modern Olympics were in 1896 in Athens. The second were in Paris in 1900. Sometimes they were coordinated around the World's Fair. So it'd be like at the same time that the World's Fair was. But finally in 1906, it kind of like gets going and rolls into more of what we know today. Somehow, Pierre, the man who brought the Olympics back, won a gold medal in poetry, which feels like that is not
A
currently an event,
sport.
but
That is the opposite of a sport.
whatever. And so there's some criticism about him. Like he was definitely like a romantic and idealized ancient Greece and was like, this is going to bring world peace. This is going to bring people together. That people are going to love this. And it does not, obviously, but
Humans don't want world peace. Humans don't want
100%.
peace. Like it's
We
just
just
not
can't
in
do
our
it.
DNA.
No. But I mean, bless his heart, I can see how you would think that it could, you know? Um, but it didn't. So, a little friendly competition between all the people. So that's going. The Winter Olympics start in 1924, and those include the things like bobsledding, curling, ice hockey, Nordic skiing, which is like the one where you cross country ski and then shoot a gun. Have you seen that one?
No. Is that,
You like
that's still
cross
a
country.
thing?
Yes, you cross country ski and then you shoot like a target,
Okay,
and then
Taylor,
you
that's
like
what I'm talking about. Like, if you had just worked at Burger King, the griddle at Burger King for like those 25 years, you could have owned a Burger King, but instead, all you learned how to do was a leisure sport like ski and shoot a gun, which points to the fact that like why I'm kind of against the Olympics in this context because it's like only the
Yeah,
uber rich can possibly have that. Is their only thing they do for like 20 years?
1,000%. So I agree, and yes, like, I totally agree with that. It's definitely a rich person's sport. A lot of these things are like Princess Zara, who has Prince William's cousin. She was like in the Olympics for like horses. You're like, well, of course you were a fucking princess. You can have a horse and be in it all the time and learn how to ride it really well. You know, whatever. Um, but the
Sorry, dogs were barking. Yes,
no,
understood.
but you know what I mean? And then like, but also like you only have one life. Shit. If you really like something, go do it. We'll talk about more
I know.
inspirational stories. We'll talk
N-
about
n-
inspirational stories of poor people doing this.
I mean, the vast majority of my resentment towards everything has to do with the fact that it's rich people can do it, so I can't, and therefore my
Yeah,
resentment builds.
no, that's totally fair. Totally fair. Um, so yeah, there's the whatever it's called, like the cross country skiing and shooting. I'm gonna look it up. It's called something. Oh, it's called the biathlon. It's just skiing and shooting. Anyway, biath. Okay, cut that out. We'll
So
talk
let
about it
me.
later.
No, no, we don't. Do you really want me to cut that out?
No, it's fine. There's
I
like
was
the
gonna
20
say,
minutes where I was Googling. You can cut out.
if I told you that my hobby is to fish and then when I catch a bass, detonate a bomb, it's like you know what I mean. Like it's like what
No,
are
I
you
know it doesn't make any
talking
sense.
about? Like
Well, it comes from okay, so it comes from the Norwegian military because that's how they would have to learn how to fight is they would cross country ski and then shoot because it's cold as shit up there.
it is so charming. I wish I was in a war as like a Nordic soldier.
You've come around. Um, no, and then there's also like I remember one time, oh gosh, I'll talk about this maybe later, but there was used to be like ski dancing. People would like dance on their skis in like the 80s. So there's like some sports come and go. Some are more popular than others, but two things I wanted to note about the Winter versus the Summer Olympics. One, these both come from my childhood. So one, I did a report on speed skating in fourth grade, and I had to write a letter to like the American Speed Skating Association, and they sent me back like a bunch of pamphlets and a poster, and it was very cute.
That's very
But
cute.
that's how you researched in the 80s. And then, oh my God, I remember. So the last Winter Olympics, they used to be the same year as the Summer Olympics. Do you remember this? So they were always held the same year. The last one was in 1992, where the Summer Olympics and the Winter Olympics were held in the same year. Then they'd wait 4 years, and then they would, do it together again. They changed it so that then the next one was in 1996, so it kind of like pushed it out a little bit, and now they're
Every
every
two
2 years.
years. Yeah.
It's one or the other. But they changed in the 90s, and I remember I had this fucking bitch of a English teacher in sixth grade. And this is when this was like a thing that was in the news. And she was like, let's talk about something that is in the news right now that is like, we could have like a debate about or whatever. And I like raised my hand and I was like, well, what about the Olympics? And she was like, they already decided that. That's dumb. And she told me I was dumb. She was such a bitch. And so I always think about her when I think about the Winter Olympics, and I wish I didn't. And then last night I was like, I hope she's dead. I looked it up. She's dead. She died in 2021. I read her obituary and I smiled like 3 times. I was like, I'm so glad that bitch is dead.
Taylor, when I was in like second grade, it was like a weekend and my mom took me and my brother to like the local park and it was like springtime and so bluebonnets were everywhere and I picked a bluebonnet so I could take it to my teacher on Monday and I took it to
Hmm.
my teacher and she took me outside of the classroom. She grabbed my arm and took me outside the classroom. It was like picking a bluebonnet, which is a state flower of Texas, is illegal and this is a crime. And like, she basically made me seem like I was a criminal for trying to
Oh, what a
give her a
bitch.
flower. And I don't remember her name, I cried for like fucking weeks after that, and I now as an adult, I'm like, I hope you're dead.
I wish he said too. Ugh,
Fucking piece of
I'm so
shit.
sorry. What a piece of shit.
Yeah, no kidding.
Yeah, what a bitch. Anyway, so my
Anyways,
bitch of the future is that.
if you're a teacher, be better.
Yeah, and you
That's
know
all
that
I'll
we
say.
remember you.
Yeah, we will remember you, and we will
Yeah,
spite you, and we will wish bad karma upon you.
I know being a teacher is hard, but she was terrible. So that's when they separated. So now the question you're asking is, how do I get my city to host an Olympics, Taylor?
That's what I was. That's what I was
Because I
thinking.
would love to do this. Yes, I would love to have all of this. I'd love to spend billions of dollars, really. I'm like itching to do it.
Doesn't
So
hosting the Olympics almost always inevitably bankrupt the host city?
yeah, it's horrible.
Got it.
Yep. So the IOC will have a bid. The International Olympic Committee has a bid for the games. So you have to kind of like fight for the game. Even to bid, it's tens of millions of dollars. So you have to like put together infrastructure plans. You have to like do marketing, put up your case, all the things. It's settled about 7 years in advance. So Paris announced its intention to bid for this year in 2015. And it ended up going down to Paris and Los Angeles for this year, and they made a deal that Paris got this year and LA gets 2028. So once you get it, now you're in trouble because you have to build Olympic villages. You have to build more transportation. You have to build like the Atlanta airport was new in the 90s because of the Olympics. You have to like rebuild everything. Some of the Olympics had that have like absolutely insane price points. The Beijing Olympics in 2008 reportedly cost around $45 billion, and the Sochi Olympics exceeded 50 billion in 2014
Well,
because that was in
they probably
Russia.
also had they probably had nothing infrastructure wise to begin with.
Exactly.
But
Yeah.
I will say, if you're the mayor of a city, a really incredible way to completely fuck over your successor is to win the Olympic bid because at the
You have
time
to do it.
you're gonna look like a superhero. Like, oh my god, like, he believed Paris, the guy at Paris did this, and then, like, fuck the guy in 7 years who has to execute on all this.
Oh my God. Let me tell you about the Paris mayor in a little bit, what her deal is. So yes, and of course also like they're to build these things if they're like aren't things already. Because you have to build like all sorts of stadiums. So you have to move people around. So in both Rio and Beijing and everywhere, they're doing it in Paris right now. They're displacing unhoused people and people who like live in the areas that they need. In Beijing, they displaced 1.5 million people, and they were doing things like just putting up walls between the Olympic stadiums and like really poor neighborhoods, so you couldn't
Yeah,
see
of
them.
course.
Um, so
How
there's
else would you
also
do it?
no, I know. But there's also then
You're
like
gonna
now in
displace
Beijing,
the rich people.
I know. But like n- so that's what I'll tell you. That's what people in France are protesting right now is they're like, couldn't we use this money to help the poor people rather than like box them up behind a wall?
Like you're the first one kicked out of this behind the wall.
Yes.
Whoever raises the
So
topic.
exactly. So they're building these huge buildings in record time. So they're cutting corners, and then what do you do with them afterwards? Like, do you need 17 stadiums in your city? You probably don't. So a lot of the ones like in Beijing are like in ruins already. Like they're like falling apart. No one needed them. No one uses them. So now it's 2024 for everyone listening to this in the future. And Paris, France, had Olympics in 1900 and in 1924. So it's been 100 years since they've had their last Olympics. This year, they're hosting the Summer Olympics. It starts on July 26th, and the Paralympics start right after. So the Paralympics is for people with like physical disabilities. They'll be right after, also in Paris. There are going to be games in 16 other cities around Paris, like in the Paris metropolitan area, and one in Tahiti, which France technically still owns part of. Some of the stadiums already existed and were renovated. Some fun things is beach volleyball. It's going to be held in a park in front of the Eiffel Tower.
That's
Sounds fun.
fun.
Yeah, that'll be delightful. The equestrian events and the modern pentathlon will be held at Versailles. Super cool.
Very cool.
Um, guess what do you know what the new sport is this year?
I could not even venture a guess.
Breakdancing.
I guess that's as much of a sport as skiing downhill and fucking shooting a gun is.
Yes. So breakdancing will be there for the first time, which will be super fun. And the mascot, John Oliver talked about this the other day. The mascot is this like cap called the Therigan. It's like a French cap that's like a red cap that kind of like flops over. So it looks like two weird droplets of blood, but it's like a cap. It's very strange. But there's like people dressed like it and like waving. That's their mascot this year. Um, there's already some problems happening already. There are some security concerns. Um, France, obviously, they are they love protesting. They're big protesters. So there's going to be a lot of protests. The Qatari emir is coming, so there's got to be extra security for that. Japan and the United States are modernizing their command structure that's supposed to be able to like help with security. Do you know who the U.S. ambassador to Japan is right now?
No clue.
It's Rahm Emanuel. I just feel like I didn't know that.
Weird.
Weird, right?
Man, that guy did good for himself, huh?
What a fucking job. It's a
Wow,
really cool job.
he's been crushing it since like 2008. Like, good for him.
I know. Um, they are worried about the opening ceremonies, that there might be some sort of like attack or violent protest or something. So it's been cut down. You used to initially you could just show up, and now you have to have like a special ticket. Like they're gonna be really careful, and hopefully everything is okay. But the fun thing that involves the mayor of Paris and Macron, the French president, is that they want the swimming events to be held in the Seine, which is the
Wait,
river that goes to Paris.
did you just watch Under Paris?
No, what's that?
Oh my God. It
Is
is a
that about
Netflix movie.
the all of the dead bodies?
No, it is a shark movie, and it's based on
Oh,
people
fun.
doing a competition in the Seine,
Oh my
which is
God, how fun.
incredible. Yeah, you gotta watch it. It's
Um,
very, very stupid. It is dumber than shit. Open like 3 bottles of wine for you and Juan, and then have the kids asleep, and then just like after your first bottle is done, when you're a little bit tipsy, then start playing it. It's fun.
um, this looks really fun. No, I love, remember that one with like the crocodiles or the alligators were all over Florida, like eating people during a hurricane? It was great. No, that's exciting. But yeah, it's in the Seine. So that you have not been allowed to swim in the Seine since 1923. And that was before the last time that Paris hosted the Olympics 100 years ago. That's how dirty it is. It's like
Yikes.
parts of it have like no life. It has no life in it. Like there's no fish. There's no like it's full of E. coli. It's like really, really gross. And it's not ready. So it's today's June 16th. It's going to start in a month or so. The river is not ready. They're going to spend $1.2 billion to clean it up. And the mayor of Paris has said that she will swim in it, and so did Macron, but they're both keep pushing their dates back because it's just like still disgusting. And then people are protesting, and there's a hashtag that's in French that I'm not going to venture to say out loud, but the hashtag is I shit in the Seine on June 23rd, which is a whole bunch of people are planning to shit in the Seine prior to the mayor swimming in it. And there's like a website that you can go to show where you are in the Seine, like upriver, and what time you should poop so that your poop gets there at the right time.
People are nuts. This is why you
So
can't have nice things.
yes, this is what I can sing. So that's what's happening in Paris right now. We will see what happens. And of course, other things are happening, like underpaid illegal immigrants are building the buildings. A lot of unhoused people have been displaced. They're definitely not prepared for the influx of people and events. So we'll see how they do, but we'll learn all about it as we move up to it. And I think then we should be pretty much done with this series by the time it starts. So we'll know a lot about it by the time we get to the Olympics, and we can talk as a group about our favorite events and what's happening. If we can figure out how to watch it without like getting our parents' cable password and trying to figure out how to get it on TV and then watching it without commentary in some ways. And that's always so annoying. But I'm super excited for gymnastics. I'm excited for the running. Um, I'm excited for a lot of it.
Wait, the mayor of Paris is a Hispanic socialist woman?
Yeah.
When did this? I do not keep up with other
How would
countries'
you know?
politics.
Anne Hidalgo, Spanish-born French politician. She's been mayor of Paris for 10 years, so we're way behind.
We're way, she's from the Socialist Party. Oh, yeah, she's literally, wait, she was born in Spain. That is like weird. Like I'm shocked that French people are that open about things. They seem like an uppity people, right?
Yeah, it looks like she moved to France. They were refugees in France after the Spanish Civil War.
Man, they must be super liberal in France or in Paris.
I think they are. I think that's
Interesting.
part of all the protests and such. Ooh, she gets to live. Oh my God, she gets to live in this huge palace.
Really?
Yeah, the Hotel de Ville. Super fun. Anyway, I'm excited. That's how it started. That's what's going on right now. And then next week, I will talk about the 1936 Berlin Olympics, which was hosted by Hitler. And also, I learned in this research that Berlin tried to host again, and they've been on the thing a couple times, and people are like, no. The
You've
IOC is
lost your
like, you
privilege.
can maybe do it in Hamburg, but like you cannot do it in Berlin again. So
Berlin's dope though. I love Berlin.
I know Berlin's awesome, but like, we'll see if they ever let them do it again.
This palace the mayor lives in is insane.
I know.
Like, what on earth is this thing?
Oh my
It
God, it's so
looks like
pretty.
Versailles.
It does. I
Hey,
just want like higher ceilings.
you should watch that movie. It's really
I
fun.
will.
The
That seems
whole thing is
awesome.
about swimming in the Seine and how they find this shark and the shark tracks itself into the Seine and yeah, it's a whole thing.
That sounds amazing. I love that. I love the I mean, I love talking about Paris and how like the catacombs of Paris is like built on top of a bunch of dead people anyway.
It's
So
terrifying. Yeah.
it's always super fun. And then yeah, I love the idea of being chased by a shark. I had a friend who was going to swim from Staten Island to Ellis Island one time, and she asked me and Juan to be her partners, or we would be in a canoe and she would be swimming, but then she ended up getting sick and not being able to do it. But I was like 100% yes, I will be your canoe person. And we would like canoe next to her and like give her snacks like a
Man,
dolphin.
that's a lot of responsibility, I think.
I know, but I was like, this seems awesome. I'm bummed we never did it because I think that would have been really fun.
Well, as always, next time.
Hmm.
Sweet. Well,
Cool.
this is exciting.
That's
Our
yeah,
topics are actually going to overlap this week, kind of, like sort of almost, but they're like
sweet.
little bit, little bit. There's something there. So,
Awesome.
um,
Please, yeah, please, friends, if you have something about the Olympics that you love or like a little story that you want to hear more about, let me know because I'm gonna do like the big ones, but also some other fun little stories in there too. So, um, let us know what you think. We're at doomtofailpod@gmail.com. We had a couple people write in. Kiara sent us a bunch of ideas that I'll forward over to you, Faris, so
nice.
you can have that. And then Nadine, our friend Nadine is in London right now, and she was just telling me that she was in London, which is super fun. So I asked her to report back if she sees that weird ass painting of the king.
So creepy. Did
Oh,
you hear it got vandalized?
yes, it's so stupid. It has a Walton grommet on it about
Yeah.
cheese or something. Um, yeah. It is what it is. But yeah, find us on all of the socials at Doom to Fail Pod. I swear to God, I'm going to get our website working. I'm going to potentially murder someone, but now I have stopped even trying to do scene names and text records, and I'm now moving the URL over to Squarespace.
All right. There you have it. We will have a
So
website soon, seemingly.
who the fuck knows? We'll try our
Who the fuck
best.
knows? Well, thank you, Taylor. Thank you for sharing. Excited. Always
Hmm.
love your multi-part series, and this one's especially
You.
topical given the Olympics. And yeah, there's so much richness to like the topic. You got like what happened in Munich, you got like
Hmm.
the Nancy Kerrigan situation I just mentioned, you got the Atlantic bomb. There's a lot that's wrapped up in it. So
I might have to add like just like fun scandals as like a last one or something that we talk about because there's like all of the drugs.
the doping,
Yeah.
Project Icarus, all that stuff. Like, yeah,
Yeah.
there's a lot to
Um,
it.
yeah. So we'll see.
Sweet. Anything else you want to say before we wrap?
Nope.
Alrighty, write to us again at doomtofellpod@gmail.com, and we will join you again in a few days. Thanks, Taylor.
Thanks.
In the matter of the people of the state of California versus Orenthal James Simpson, case number BA096.
And so, my fellow Americans, ask not what your country can do for you. Ask what what you can do for your country.
Boom, we are back, Taylor. Happy Wednesday.
Happy Wednesday.
A
Welcome.
nice, smooth, easy week so far. Hopefully it's been easy for all of our listeners as well. And for you, Taylor.
I mean, they're all exactly the same.
They're exactly the same. I know. This is our life. Taylor, are you going to be introducing us because you fired me from that role?
Welcome, friends, to Doomed to Fail. We're the podcast that brings you twice a week history's most epic disasters and notorious failures. I am Taylor, joined by Fars. Fars, doing well.
I'm doing well. Is Juan like revising and writing scripts on this, or
He needs to be.
I mean, he's the one with the opinion. So
Tell your friends. Yeah. Anyway, it's my turn today.
it's your turn. Are we gonna do a guessing game, or is it gonna be futile?
Well, I told you I was going to do last week because I'm doing a 4-part series.
Olympics.
We're on part 2.
Thank you.
Part 2. So we are going to talk about the Olympics between the beginning and 1950, and a lot of stuff happens. And I read several books this week. I have a lot of articles in the notes, but the 2 books that I read, one of them was called Games of Deception: The True Story of the First U.S. Olympic Basketball Team. And then I read Triumph: The Untold Story of Jesse Owens and Hitler's Olympics. I also, not for this, but in the last couple of years, I have read a book called Hitler's American Model: The United States and the Making of Nazi Race Law. So I'm going to talk about that a little bit. And then I have some articles as well that I read. So we will kind of get to all of that. I kind of go back and forth in this story. I'm not sure how organized I am, but it's super interesting. So let's talk about it. To recap, last week we talked about the ancient Olympics, how you get an Olympics, and some stuff to prep for the Olympics this year. Have you seen more Olympics news since then, Fars? Is it like in your algorithm now?
It is not. It is not.
Damn.
Luckily, my overlords have not discovered this.
Well, hopefully we'll get there. So we're going to go to Germany, to Hitler's Germany specifically for the 1936 Olympics. And before that, let's talk about other things that happened up until 1936. So as we learned, the Olympics were sort of restarted at the very, very end of the 1800s, and there were a couple, they were tied to like World's Fairs and trying to get it to be popular again. In 1906, the Olympic Games were held in Athens. They're not officially recognized as Olympic Games now because of like some rule thing that I don't understand, but they were more organized than the other ones and got people kind of to be like, okay, we actually can do this every 4 years, you know?
Sweet.
And what?
No, sweet.
Sweet. So a couple of things that we know that we like, well, we people who have seen the Olympics and like remember parts of it that you kind of like think have always been there. One thing is this one in 1906 started the Parade of Nations. So do you know what that is? Everyone walks in together. So Greece will always start and the host nation always ends, and everything else is in alphabetical order. So to just sidetrack about that tradition, so every country has someone carry the flag. And in the beginning, when you passed the host city's leaders, like the people in charge of the host committee, the president, whatever, the people in charge of the country, you would dip your flag. So one person's carrying your country's flag, you would dip the flag. That is something that almost immediately stopped happening because in like the early 1900s, there were games in London, and an Irish American person was a flag holder, and he was like, "Fuck you, England," and he did not dip the flag to the king because he's Irish, obviously, like a lot of animosity between those folks. So they kind of stopped doing it. And so you don't really see that anymore. There's also an Olympic salute, which is raising your right hand kind of off to the side, but it looks a lot like a Nazi salute.
It sounds like a sick hill.
Like almost exactly. So they stopped doing that in like the 1940s because they were like, yeah, this looks a little bit too much like the Hitler salute, and we don't want anyone to do that. So now you just kind of like walk by and like maybe wave, maybe have your hands over your heart, something like respectful, but you don't do any sort of like special salute. In the 1912 Olympic Games were held in Stockholm, and the big thing there, Jim Thorpe won gold medals in both the pentathlon and the decathlon. He was stripped of his medals due to the amateur rules, but he got them awarded post-death in 1983. 1912 is also the first time they used electric timing to start timing things, so things can get a little bit more accurate because people are winning by like, speaking of like measurements, by like tenths of a second, you know.
Right.
So there in 1920 they were in Antwerp, and this was the introduction of the Olympic flag, which is those five rings that we see all the time, and the first Olympic oath. So every Olympics, one athlete will take an oath on behalf of everyone. And it's basically like, I'm going to be a good sport and try my best and blah, blah, blah. Great. So that still happens. That happened in 1920.
Was the
And
flame around at this point?
not yet, not yet. Good question. So in 1924 was the debut of the Winter Olympics. So they were held separately, but um, it's the first time like figure skating was in the Summer Olympics. I was kind of like figuring that out in 1924. Um, there was a man named Paavo Nurmi who was the flying Finn from Finland who won 5 gold medals in track and field, which was like a huge, so he became like really famous from that. In 1928, in Amsterdam was the first time women were allowed to compete. So before this, it's just been dudes. So now women are allowed to compete, and this is when the Olympic flame is introduced.
Sorry, what
So
year?
in 1928,
Got it.
and the Amsterdam Games. In 1932, the games were in Los Angeles, and another person, uh, a woman named Mildred Zaharias. She won 2 gold medals. That was a big deal. It was obviously 1932 was the Great Depression. So the games, they actually did a really good job organizing them. And it was the first time they built an Olympic village for the athletes. And so that was like something that Los Angeles was credited for. So those are just some like fun facts about things that happened at the other Olympics. I'm sure there's like inspirational stories, but we're not going to have time for that. But I'm sure they exist. So 1936, we are in Berlin. This is what we're going to talk about for the most part today. Some of the fun facts is this was the first time that the Olympics were televised live. So this is like a new technology. It was only, you could only really see it like in and around Berlin, but still it was a technology. So like there's a story where like the athletes are in the Olympic Village and they're able to watch the competition. And that's the first time that it ever happened. People were like, this is happening now, like super big deal that it was live.
Taylor, just for context, 50 years after the first time we can televise an Olympic game in the immediate vicinity where the game is taking place, we launched the Hubble telescope that can take a picture of 250,000 galaxies in deep space and show us the origination point of the Earth.
Things are moving too fast.
Crazy.
I
Anyway,
know.
go ahead. Sorry.
I know, you're totally right. And then this was also the first time that the flame was lit in Greece and brought to the host city. So that tradition started here, and they still do that now. So like someone in Greece will light it and then they like run it all over the world, you know, and then they bring it to the final place. Did
That's
you know
pretty
that?
cool. Yeah.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. So
Is it true though? Is it really true? Has that really been the same flame for all those years?
I feel like it's a new flame every time, but but maybe it is the same flame. It just keeps going. I mean, who would know if it wasn't?
It's
Who
true.
cares?
What do you DNA test the
Yeah,
flame?
exactly. What are you gonna do? Like, I feel like someone's probably fallen or like dropped it or left it at a bar, you know. I'm sure there's something. My dad told me this story. I don't know if it's true, and I have no sources for this, where like a Canadian team won the Stanley Cup and they had a party, and the next morning, like one of the guy's neighbors called him and was like, "Dude, you left the Stanley Cup on the lawn."
I do love the idea of like some German runner getting drunk at some beer hall and leaving the Olympic flame there.
Yeah, and I feel like someone recently drop like the World Cup trophy off a bus,
I
like in
don't
the middle
know.
of the parade. I feel like he like dropped it, and it was pretty funny. So we're in Berlin again. Berlin got the Olympics in 1931. So we talked about before, you get the okay to host Olympics like 10 to 5 years before you actually host them. So in 1931, Berlin got the games, and that was a very different Germany than the Germany of 1936. So Hitler became chancellor on January 30th, 1933, and the Nazis are now in power, and they've already done a ton of stuff. It's before Kristallnacht, where they destroy just like thousands of Jewish businesses all over the country, but it is after the Nuremberg rallies. So people can see that the Nazi regime is like really, really strong in Germany. And they do, of course, like every city that hosts the Olympics, try to hide their bad things. So they do things like declare the week of the opening ceremony is the week of laughter. They want everybody to just be in a good mood. They hide their anti-Semitic posters. So they're like, we still believe this, but no one else is going to understand. So let's like take these posters down. They send thousands of Romani people to concentration camps. They send unhoused people to jail. They are just like, cleaning up the streets any way that they can. And again, like everybody who hosts the Olympics, they
Right.
always do this. So they're also like very, very obviously prepping for war. So they're like, oh, no, 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 no. Like, we're super cool. We just like are like Germany, like whatever, no big deal. But like people are getting there to compete in the games and they're like, are they building tanks next door? Because they totally are. Like it's very clear that they're prepping for war, that they're going to instigate something big, but they're trying to hide it. They brought back banned books, which is ridiculous. They like have them back on the shelves for a little bit so people don't realize that what is happening. And some big concentration camps have just opened. Sachsenhausen just opened. So nobody ever didn't know that this stuff was happening, but they were like trying their best to hide it. A little bit of just history is that eventually 30 people who had won Olympic medals from around Europe were killed in concentration camps eventually because they were Jewish. One really good, a couple examples, they're just so sad. A young man, they're all very, very young, named Bronislaw Czech. He was an alpine jumper from Poland. He died in Auschwitz. Victor Perez was a French boxer. He died in the walk out of Auschwitz in 1945. He was only 33. But while they were in the concentration camps, they would make him like box other people, even though he was like an Olympian, and like make him hurt people for like their sport. Bronislaw Czech, they offered him clemency if he would coach the German high jumping or alpine jumping team, and he said no. So he ended up dying there as well, which is
I mean,
terrible.
I probably would have done it. My pride's not worth that much.
So we're going to focus on the 1936 Summer Olympics because that's the big one. But there was a 1936 German Olympics. It was in Garmisch-Partenkirchen, Germany, from February 6th to February 16th. It was the only Winter Games that have ever been held in Germany. It was the last one before the war. It was really militarized. So by the time the Summer Games happen, there will be less military. So like in first the Winter Games, they had like, everyone was wearing their uniforms. Like the SS was there. Hitler Youth were all wearing their uniforms. So it was really intimidating and scary. And people were like, they said it and they saw it. So by the time the Summer Olympics happen, they're a little bit less militarized. Like they just like, they're not, but they look a little bit less. So like the Hitler Youth get to wear like lederhosen instead of their terrifying uniforms, just to like kind of balance it and look less scary.
It's kind of more scary when they're not wearing the uniform. It's like when like a kid is evil, and it's like the fact that they're
Hmm.
a kid and don't look evil is what makes it more scary.
And like also, I don't know, you've been to Germany?
Yeah.
Everyone looks the same.
I
Like
mean, I can't
even
say
now.
that, but
You don't no, not you you should can. Everyone German is tall and blonde. Like they look the same.
they kind
And
of
like that
engineered it that way, though.
exactly. So like this is like going there and seeing everybody like being like we're super happy. You'd be like, okay, like you're really stressing me out, German children, especially in this time. So some other just facts about those Winter Olympics. Um, there were 28 countries that participated. It was Liechtenstein's first time, and everything like kind of went okay, but everything was covered in swastikas. So people were a little bit creeped out. So there was
But why were
very
they creeped out? They didn't know what that meant at that time.
they did. They knew. Like they knew that they were like persecuting Jewish people. They knew that they were um fascists. Like they knew those things and then they like saw the way that they were acting, like it was creepy and weird.
Has there ever been a time when a political symbol being used for by a country was a good thing?
I don't know.
I can't think of a single time.
When you get like nationalistic, I know that Ben Franklin wanted our national bird to be a turkey. Did you learn that in elementary school?
That's a little different. That would have been cute
Instead of
though.
a instead of a bald eagle.
That would have been very cute.
In Super Troopers 2, Farva shoots a bird and it like falls out and they go, Farva, that's a bald eagle. It's just like really funny.
Well, I'm thinking, okay, so the hammer and sickle, that was the communist symbol, and that became the
Hmm.
national flag of the USSR. The swastika was the Nazi symbol. That became the national flag of Germany. Like, I don't think it's ever been
Yeah.
a good thing.
And so actually, I wrote this down later, but let me skip to it because we looked this up last night. I wrote, Juan asked a good question. So last night, Juan and I were watching a movie that I'm going to tell you about in a little bit. But so the current German flag is three colors. It's black, red, and gold, like three bars.
Yeah.
That flag was adopted after World War One because you'll remember that like Germany is just newly unified. So before World War One, it like barely had time to be a country before World War One happened. It was like a bunch of little like principalities or whatever, and then it became one thing. So that was a German flag. Then when the Nazis came into power, they changed it to black, white, red. So their colors, but still the three bars. And then it just became the swastika that we all know, like the red with the white circle and the swastika. And that became Germany's flag. And then after World War, I wrote, then they just said, fuck it, it's a swastika. That's like, they made it that. And then after World War II, it went back to where it had been. That's what it is today.
Interesting. Well,
So
I
they
guess,
like
yeah, given
switch it
how
over.
new a country it was, nobody's attached to the flag at that point.
Yeah,
Like whatever, make it a swastika. Who cares? I mean,
fuck it.
it's not
Fuck it, you
good, but
guys.
still.
I also follow a Instagram account called Old Hollywood Swoon, and they always talk about how handsome Captain Von Trapp is from Sound of Music. Have you seen Sound of Music?
Guess the answer to that.
I don't know. You can surprise me. So there's a part where he gets home from his honeymoon in Austria and they have put Nazi flags up on his house and he takes them down and tears them up. And then the Instagram account is always like, girls only want one thing and it's Captain Von Trapp staring like tearing up a Nazi flag.
Wait,
Is it he's very
was Donald
handsome.
Sutherland this guy?
No.
Oh, okay, never mind.
No. Anyway,
Wait,
anyway.
he's a real person?
Yeah.
Wait, The Sound of Music's a real story?
Yes.
Okay.
I went, yeah. We can talk about this later. I know a lot about the Sound of Music, but yes, the Von Trapps are real. Um,
Wow.
and Captain Von Trapp, he did a thing in World War One where like he killed a lot of people in a submarine. And there's like a couple like things about his past that are interesting that we can talk about later. We're in the Summer Olympics now. There's swastikas everywhere. Some of the stuff that happened like in the background is Hitler's obviously like super excited to have Aryans win everything because that's his
Philosophy.
deal. Yeah.
He's kind of known for this.
Yeah, that's his thing. And so it's fun to be like, we really showed him because we have some, black people from America won a bunch of events. And like, that's great. But we have to remember, and we'll talk about this a bunch, that in America, Hitler was literally looking at the way that we segregated race as a model for what they were going to do in Germany. They obviously went further, but that was like, he knew that was like America had no moral ground to stand on when there's segregation and horrible inequality in America
Right.
in 1936, you know? Um, so there were like I said, Black and Jewish athletes on the American teams, but it wasn't like easy for them to get on there and they were treated differently. Some of them didn't go out of, people knew what was going on in Germany and people would say like, don't go, we should boycott this. And then some of them were like, let's show them that we can do this. So there's like one Jewish person on the US basketball team, and like he was very brave to go, but he was like, we have to show them like we are athletes and all the things. Um, the it's all amateurs, like we said before, but there are like amateur leagues that people are in, and if you're like, there's a couple ways to get in. If you're really, really good, you're going to get like sponsored and be able to get in. If you are like, oh, if you're rich, you can also get in. You know what I mean? Like if you're rich and you have the time to like practice and do all these things, you'll be able to get in. So in Germany, they were like, yeah, 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 totally. If you're a member of an amateur club, you can be in the Olympics. Like, we're not discriminating against anyone, but like, no Jewish person could join the amateur clubs. So it was like, they just like didn't say that. But
Yeah.
obviously no, there's no Jewish people in there. Um, 49 countries were in the Olympics. Around 4,000 athletes competed. The Soviet Union didn't go. Um, I feel so bad for athletes when there's like even like the one that was moved for COVID or when they like their country decides to boycott it because like we said last week, like you train your whole life for this like one thing. And if you the 4 years difference is huge.
Yeah.
Like
Like
if
you're not
I'm
going to be
in
the same person when you're like 28 that you will be when you're 32.
yeah. So some people did boycott. But let's talk about some things that happened before we talk about some like, other stories. So there were the opening ceremonies, obviously, which is like the big pomp thing. And the biggest question was like, who was going to do the Nazi salute? Because Hitler was there. And, in the book I read, it talks about like you could tell when Hitler was coming because people were like losing their fucking minds on the street. Like hundreds of thousands of people like giving the Nazi salute, so excited to see him in the arena. They're so excited that he's there. And so who is going to salute him and who isn't? Most countries didn't. Some of them did. Like obviously, like Japan did the Nazi salute. The Bulgarians fucking loved it, and they stepped it up and did goose steps. They were like, "We love you." Like they were super into it. The U.S. walked by with their hands on their hearts. Um, the Some of them did the Olympic salute, which was close, but like it's easy. Oh, it's easy for them later to give it.
On television in 1936, it'll look the same.
Exactly. So they were like, "Oh no, the Olympics salute." You're like, "Yeah, whatever." So there was a lot of that happening. Also, the Hindenburg was there, which is kind of fun. The Hindenburg flew
That's fun.
over a couple times. Um, so all of this is being recorded by Leni Riefenstahl. Have you ever heard of her?
No.
Okay, so I wrote this bitch deserves her own episode because, and I will probably talk about her maybe next year on Women's History Month because she's like so interesting. But she was a German filmmaker, and so she made the movie The Triumph of the Will, which is about the Nuremberg rallies, like the big Nazi rallies, and she made a movie called Olympia about the Olympics. So she was Hitler's like documentarian, and she got to live to be 101. Like she got off. Like she was like at Hitler's house, like good friends with him and making this propaganda for him. And she got to live to be 101, which I think is absolutely bullshit. And I did read a book called Hitler's Furies about like the women in Iraq in his circle. And then like another one that pisses me off is like Ilse Koch. She was the bitch of Buchenwald. She was just like a terrible, terrible, terrible person. And she died by suicide in the 1960s. Or fuck her to the moon and back. So fuck Leni Riefenstahl. But I did watch her movie last night on YouTube. You can see it. It's
Wait, you
there's
watched
no way to,
Triumph of the Will?
no, I watched Olympia. I think I've seen
Oh,
parts of
oh.
Triumph of the Will, but I watched Olympia, which is the one that she made. So there's like stories of her like, running around with her cameras, fighting with Goebbels, trying to like make sure that she could see everything. So she recorded the opening ceremonies. The first like 10 minutes are like this really weird, like artsy thing with like um scarves in the air and the Acropolis and like all these things. And then she has the some of the athletics in there. So there's no way to understand how excited the Germans were about this. So like no way to like understand, underestimate, but like they were so excited about this. And so the movie shows them, like in the streets and in the crowds, just like being super excited. Another fun thing is they let out hundreds of birds at the end and they pooped on everyone, which is hilarious.
Predictably.
Um, but if you do watch it, I'll put the link to the YouTube version I watched. There's a bunch of them. But at a minute 58 is when you can see Jesse Owens doing the long jump that we'll talk about. But that's what you'll want to see after this episode. So that's where you want to go.
Hey,
Um,
Taylor, Lenny, what's her
Riefenstahl?
name? Thank you. She has a website that's still up and active, and the homepage looks like a Nazi's site. Like the
Yeah.
font and the colors and everything look good. But then if you click on her biography, it just shows all these like pictures of her being a cool, awesome, having a great life. There's pictures of her with Mick Jagger for some reason and his
Ugh.
wife. Yeah,
Can
she
you
like
believe that she like
lives.
saw September 11th?
There's her with those two tiger guys. What are their names?
Siegfried and Roy.
Thank you. Yeah, she lives a great life. I mean,
Ah,
not a well-lived life. But like,
No, but
they
it is absolute bullshit that she got off. Yeah, totally. I definitely want to talk more about her later. Um, so there are several Black people there. There were other Black, especially track and field folks on the U.S. teams, and I'll talk a little bit about them later. Um, the Oh, one more thing. In 1955, Riefenstahl agreed to remove some Hitler from her movie so she could have it screened in the Museum of Modern Art in New York. Like, ugh, I hate her. Guess who else was there? The Nazi Charles Lindbergh was there, and he sat next to Goering the whole time and talked about the Air Force
wait,
because he's,
actual Lindbergh was there?
yeah, yeah, because he was like an American, but he was obviously also a Nazi, which we've mentioned in passing before. So he was super excited to be there and like meet with, especially Goering, who was in charge of the um,
Air Force.
German Air Force. Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's the opening ceremonies. Another thing to note is Hitler's plan was for the next one, the 1940 Olympics were planned to be in Tokyo, and then after that, they would just all be in Germany.
Of course, because they would win everything.
Right. Like that would they would be in Germany for, the thousand years or of the Reich or whatever. Also to note, these stadiums that they built in 1936, later they would be the places where they would do mass shootings.
Seriously.
Like as the world was ending, as like their world was crumbling, they would do like last minute shootings in there. Um, I read a book about basketball because there's like a big basketball story here that I'll tell you about. But the Nuremberg, after the Nuremberg trials, the people who were hung, they were it was on a basketball court. So it's like basketball became like a national sport, and it's where they ended up actually like executing a lot of the Nazis on a basketball court, which is just
Sweet.
creepy and interesting. Yeah. So let's talk about the U.S. team. So the United States team, again, they're amateurs. They got there in kind of a roundabout way because the Olympics is pretty new, but like track and field is actually pretty popular. People like know good track and field people. Some other sports are starting to get more popular. And the teams would qualify, but then like not have enough money to get to New York because they had to take a boat from New York to Europe. So they would do things like fundraise in their communities to be like, we need $1,000 to get this basketball team all the way over to New York City. Um, there were qualifiers on Randall's Island, which is right next to Astoria, Queens, like on the Triborough Bridge. And the swimming trials were in a pool in Astoria, Queens, that I used to live right next to. Juan and I lived right next to this pool. It was like a beautiful outdoor pool, and it had like a diving area and like a Olympic-sized pool, and it would be open in the summer for people to go in and swim. But that was built specifically for that. During the qualifiers on Randall's Island, President Roosevelt was there to help kick them off. And also, a young boy from Queens named Anthony Benedetto sang at the opening of the Olympic trials in 1936, and later he would be Tony Bennett,
No
which
way.
is kind of fun. Yeah,
Wait, what was his name?
Anthony Benedetto.
That's so cute.
Isn't that cute? So he was 9 years old, and
Is he still alive?
no, he just died like last year. I just looked it up. Yeah. But I saw him sing one time, and he was, I mean, obviously it was insane. But yeah, I thought that was fun.
Anthony
So
Benedetto. That's
Anthony
so
Benedict,
cute.
this little Italian boy from Queens.
Fabriz.
So the U.S. team, once everybody qualified, like, whatever, they get to New York to go to Europe. They take a ship called the SS Manhattan from New York City. So once on board, they had a ton of food, and that's something that they talk about in every book I read. Like the food was really good. They had a bunch of drinks. Jesse Owens was a little bit seasick, so he didn't eat a lot. Um, One fun story, there's a woman swimmer named Eleanor Holm. She seems fun. She got kicked off the team for being drunk every night. And she was like, even drinking, I'm going to beat every world record. Like, what is wrong with you? And she said, quote, this chaperone came up to me and told me it was time to go to bed. God, it was about 9 o'clock, and who wanted to go down in the basement and sleep anyway? I said to her, oh, is it really bedtime? Did you make the Olympic team or did I? And I had a few glasses of champagne. I love that
Fun.
for her. Um, so she was fun. She was married a bunch. She was in movies with another Olympian that was there who won the decathlon. She was married to a Hollywood guy. This is like later, just like a fun side. And she got divorced, and her alimony was $30,000 per month, which is equivalent to $340,000 today.
Holy shit.
which is dumb and amazing. So she's great. She's in the Swimming Hall of Fame. She seems fun. At the pier when the SS Manhattan was going off to Europe, there's one dude with a sign that was like, "Don't go." Like the Nazis are bad. Don't go. But obviously they went. Once they got to Germany, there were a bunch of Germans there waiting for them, looking all the same, being really happy to see them. The men got to stay in an Olympic village that was very nice. And I have pictures of like Jesse Owens's room. The Olympic Village is now like a museum, but it was very nice. They had chefs that made food from all over the world, which is very interesting. That like they had German chefs making like Indian food. Like I'm really impressed that they
I'm
did that.
sure it tasted amazing.
They said
I'm
that
sure
they
Germans cooking Indian food came out
that Germans
perfect.
like they made Japanese food. Like that is pretty impressive that they would like bother to do that. The women, of course, were in a shitty dorm with like no food and they slept on straw mattresses. But the men's dorm was really nice in the Olympic Village.
Fun.
Yeah. So, okay,
Taylor,
let's
can I
talk
ask a
about
question?
sports. Yes, please ask questions.
Are you going to talk about Helen Mayer more?
No.
Okay.
Who is that?
So when the boycott was being kind of bandied about from other countries, Hitler allowed one Jewish woman to
Oh,
take part. Her name is Helen Mayer, and she ended up having to flee the country after.
I bet she did.
She won silver, and I have no idea what she won silver in. It's called the women's foil. I don't know what that means.
I think it's fencing. It says German fencer. Fencer. That's
Oh,
cool. Good for her. I mean, yeah, really crazy.
and yeah.
She looks cool.
Because I'm also like, do you win or do you lose? Because if you lose, you prove to them that you're not superior. But if you win, you put it in their face that you are superior. Like, what do you do?
You leave as fast as
You
you
leave as fast as you
can.
can. Exactly right.
Poor thing. She died of cancer in 1952. Yeah, no, there's so many stories of like little ones that I'd love to talk about, and I didn't get to that one. But yeah, that's super interesting. Um, ugh, yeah. So okay, I have a couple sports to tell you about. Basketball. So I read a book about basketball because basketball was like relatively new during this time. This was the first time basketball was in the Olympics. James Naismith, who's the dude who invented basketball, he did it similarly to the Pierre who started the Olympics. Like he thought that people needed more sportsmanship, more physical activity. He introduced it at a YMCA and they would bring it around to college campuses. The rules would change a little bit, but essentially he's a person that like invented modern basketball. Um, he the people on the basketball team played for amateur basketball teams, which like they're still p playing on like a team, which seems professional, but whatever. And a lot of them came from the Universal Pictures basketball team, which is fun that they had one. And these were the guys who needed to fundraise, and eventually they would lose their jobs. And when they came back, there wouldn't be a team anymore, but they did get to go to do it. The team was entirely white. There was one Jewish person on the team. James Naismith actually got to go. So when he got there, no one really knew who he was. And then someone said, he's a guy who invented basketball. And then he got like more of a welcome and he got like tickets to go see it. But he was there. And the US did win. They won the gold, but they played against like a bunch of other teams who played it a little bit differently again because it was like brand new. The way that they had made the ball, they made it have like um stitches like a football. You can't dribble that because the stitches are in the way.
Yeah.
You know, the team from the Philippines was so good they considered having a separate category for short people because they were
Aw.
so good, but they didn't stand a chance. And the final game was in outside in a flooded field that was like covered 2 inches in mud, and then they had this, like the ball was like totally waterlogged, and they had to like try to get it to work, and the U.S. beat Canada 19-8 in the final game and won the gold medal. So
Right now, if you could put LeBron James against all 10 from actually put him against every person combined, and you just crush it a
yeah,
thousand to 1 point.
1,000%. Yeah, but it's brand new, which is kind of fun that it's like a brand new sport, pretty much for the world, and then it gets into the Olympics. Um, Another thing about boats, George Clooney made a movie called The Boys in the Boat. I didn't watch it, but like it's like another Olympic feel-good movie. It was kids from the University of Washington. They ended up
Oh, I know
narrowly,
this one.
do you
Yeah,
know what I
okay.
mean? They ended up beating the Germans and the Italians, which was great. But that's what happened. I'm sure there's like personal struggles in there as well in the movie that I did not watch.
Like, doesn't matter.
Yeah, I'm not gonna
The
watch it.
personal struggles of people that have been dead for 100 years don't really matter. I
That
will
one I'm
say
not gonna.
Germany's medal count, like they kind of blew it out of the water. 101 to the US, which is number two at 57.
In 1936.
Yeah.
Nice. Yeah, probably
Which,
as
I mean, home team
expected.
advantage, that's probably a thing. But I guess what it really boils down to is like, you don't really care that your country was number one. And again, not to make fun of curling. I know we have a lot of curling listeners out there, but
Hmm.
if you win gold in curling, it's not, nobody's going to care as much if you win gold in like figure skating or in like gymnastics, right?
Yeah, and I think it's like a matter of percentages too. Like, of course, like the United States and China and Russia always have the most medals in all of the Olympics because they have the most people, you know. And if you're like, if 0.0001% of the population is great at gymnastics, like, that's a lot more people here than it is in France,
Right.
you know. Um, so yeah, I think that they had a lot more athletes too, just in general. But like, I think that's on purpose because they were, trying to prove that they won. So, okay, the reason that we're here is to talk about track and talk about Jesse Owens. Do you know who Jesse Owens is?
Yeah, of course.
So, my cousin and Juan's cousin both went to the Ohio State University where Jesse Owens went. And I texted them both and I was like, is there Jesse Owens stuff at Ohio State that like talks about him? And one of the cousins sent me back, said, yes, every single sports thing is named after him, and sent me a website to an archive that has like his papers from when he went to Germany, tons of pictures from his life. It's super, super helpful. And then the other cousin said, is that a football thing? Which made me laugh.
Which I can almost understand because Ohio State is so up its own ass about
About
football.
football. Yeah.
Yeah.
The Ohio State University.
Give it a
No.
rest.
I know. So yes, Jesse Owens was the fastest man in the world during in 1936. Who's the fastest man in the world today?
Still got to be Usain Bolt, right?
Yeah. Oh yeah. Have you seen the videos of him like slowing down and laughing? Like
He
he's
does
just
the
so
thumbs
fast.
up. He stops and does the thumbs. It's so cool.
He's so fast. Yes, Usain Bolt is the fastest man in the world right now. But Jesse Owens was the fastest man in the world in 1936. And like it's a shame that we can't put them in the same circumstances and have them race, you know? Like if Jesse Owens had access to trainers or even like skin tight clothing, what could he have done differently? And who would win? Like all that stuff is really fun to think about. So James Cleveland Owens was born September 12th, 1913 in Alabama. He was the grandson of an enslaved person, and his parents were sharecroppers. They moved to Ohio when he was 9 for like better opportunities. And when he was in school, his teacher asked him his name, and he said JC, which is James Cleveland, but she heard Jesse. That's what she wrote down, and that became his name because
Whoa.
because he had like a really thick Southern accent, and she didn't understand what he was saying. So he became Jesse. Jesse Owens will always be working besides doing track and besides going to school and besides having a family. He had a ton of jobs his whole life. While he was in junior high, he was working to deliver groceries after school, but his track coach, Charles Riley, knew there was something special, like saw him running and was like, this is different, and convinced him to run before school. So before school he would run, he'd go to school, then he'd work all night, just like always, always busy. He met his wife, Minnie Ruth Solomon, when they were in junior high. So they were like always together. They had their first child in 1932, and they didn't get married until 1935. But during this time, while he's in high school, he's a new dad, he's working all these jobs, he is breaking records like unbelievable. He equaled the world record in the 100-yard dash and the long jump in 1933 at the National High School Championships. In college, he's going to get a whole bunch of other awards I'll talk about in a second. But just to note, him and Minnie, they get married on July 5th, 1935, and they'll be married until his death. So, and he has two more children with her. Do you have a question?
No.
Okay. So he's at Ohio State. He is great, but he doesn't get a scholarship because he's black. Like that's just he's still like fighting against that. The team is a traveling team, but he has to travel separately from everybody else. He can't stay in the same hotels that they stay at, and he can't eat the same food that they eat because there's a lot of places that just like w literally won't let him in,
Yeah,
which
it's like the
is
Green Book
yeah.
situation.
So he has a job with a local legislature. He has a job at a gas station, just like a bunch of other jobs while he's running track, while he's in school, while he's on the traveling team. He goes to LA and it's in the papers that he's hanging out with this woman who's like a socialite. And then his wife is pissed, obviously, because she's at home with a baby. And as soon as he gets home, they get married. Because he was like, sorry,
Sorry
it's
about
in the
that.
paper with the other woman. Um, in 1935 and 1936, he won 8 gold medals in the NCAA championships, 4 in each. That record wouldn't be beat until 2006. So he was just like winning medals. Um, one of the biggest days in sports was March 25th, 1935, during the Big Ten track meet in Ann Arbor. He set 3 world records and tied a fourth. So he's like this college kid, just like literally setting world records. He did a world record for the long jump at 26 feet and 8 1/4 inches, which would last 25 years. He got a gold in the 220-yard sprint, the 220-yard low hurdles. And like the way he would run the hurdles wasn't like the right way to run it. He would just like run really fast and like kind of hop and like do it again, but he was still so much faster than everybody else that didn't matter.
I do when
Um,
I see them do the hurdles and I see them kick their legs up, I'm like, that looks so much harder to do it that way than to like just
yeah,
hop over it.
totally. So he would just like hop over it, but he was still faster than everybody else.
Yeah.
And a lot of those records are actually like double records because it, like 220 yards is like X amount of meters or whatever. So he's just like kicking ass,
Right.
taking names. Um, so now it's time to get ready for the Olympics. Like he knows that he's going to go and he qualifies obviously pretty easily. A couple people try to get him not to go, specifically the NAACP, want the black athletes to boycott it because of Nazis. And the I know this because I know a lot about the Roosevelt administration, but the president of the NAACP at this time um, wrote wrote Owens a letter, but he didn't ended up not sending it. But his name is Walter White, and that always makes me laugh because I think of Breaking Bad.
Of course.
Yeah. Um, but he is going. He does go. He passed all the trials. Obviously, there's a bunch of other people that are with him. He's on the SS Manhattan with everyone. He was very seasick the whole time, but he gets there and like gets his balance again and is like ready to run. There's 2 conflicting stories I read about shoes. One of them is probably not true that Adi Dassler of Adidas sponsored his shoes, like gave him shoes. And then another one that he didn't have any shoes, so his coach bought them off the rack for him just like regular shoes. They didn't have time to break them in. That one's probably more true than the other one.
Right.
Um, he's in the Olympic Village. His diary, I read that in the Ohio Archive. He's having a good time. He's like, the food's good. Everyone's super nice because that was true. So it's also important to note that he's not the only black person on the team. There are 18 black athletes that go to Germany. I have a link to an article from the United States Holocaust Memorial Museum that has some notes on them. But these were all like young men, like kids, who were going to Europe to win these awards for their country and going home to a segregated America, you know? So, um, John Woodruff, who won the 800 meter, after he got home, he said, quote, after the Olympics, we had a track meet to run in Annapolis at the Naval Academy. Now here I am, an Olympic champion, and they told the coach that I couldn't run. I couldn't come. So I stayed home because of discrimination. That let me know just what the situation was. Things hadn't changed. Things hadn't changed. You know,
Yeah, it's nuts.
nuts. So, against all odds, the Germans are pumped about Jesse Owens because he's just so fast. And they're just like really excited to see him. And so Hitler gets pissed because they cheer for him all the time. And Hitler's there and he's always mad about it. Hitler does greet the first handful of gold medal winners. And I think, like you said, far as a lot of the gold medal winners are German. So the first couple events, Germans win. He greets them in like his box or whatever. And then he leaves before the first black person wins something. And they were like, oh, he's busy or whatever. And then someone was like, you can't do this. Like, this is a bad look. So he didn't greet anybody else. So he didn't look like he was discriminating. And obviously he was.
Did he think that only Germans were gonna win, or only
Uh,
white people were gonna win?
that was the hope. And that was what it would be like. That was his Olympics. His Olympics would be like white people against white people forever.
That'd be
Like
so
that was the
boring.
plan. I know.
So boring.
And so he um there are rumors that did wave at Jesse Owens when he started winning his medals. He may have done his like little half heil that he does sometimes. Who knows what really happened? But like they never met. He never actually like shook his hand. Like they never talked to each other. Jesse Owens did say, quote, Hitler didn't snub me. It was our president who snubbed me. The president didn't even send me a telegram, which is true and fair. Roosevelt didn't send him anything. He should have.
What,
Um,
FDR?
yeah.
Weird.
Um, so and then Hitler later was like, oh, later he was like, yeah, we definitely need to ban black people from the future Olympics because they have an unfair advantage because they're closer to living in the jungle,
Jesus
which is
Christ.
exactly something that Hitler would say when he was losing, you know. Um, I don't need to say what an asshole, but you know what I mean. So back to running, Jesse Owens easily qualified for each of the things. So he didn't just run, he did a couple dashes, he did the long jump, and he ended up doing the relay as well. So he made a good friend with a German man named Luz Long, L-U-Z. And
I'm literally on his Wikipedia page right
are
now.
you? So Luz Long and Jesse Owens were legitimately friends. There's a couple stories like Jesse has said that Luz helped him with something, but that's probably not true. Like they probably met after the meet. This is what that minute 58 on the Lenny Riefenstahl movie shows them doing the long jump together, and they show like Jesse Owens, he wins, but there's pictures of them walking arm in arm, and this is like a tall man who looks like a Nazi. He's like blonde, you know,
Wearing
very
all white.
German. Yeah, his their tracksuits have swastikas on them. I mean, obviously, but like it's just wild.
Oh, you
And
can't
so
really make it out in the picture, but I
it's
I
in
get your
it's in like
point.
the middle. Yeah. So Luce and Jesse become friends. They would write letters back and forth after the Olympics. The last letter he sent to Jesse Owens said, "Can you tell my son about the time that we ran together and people got along?" And then Luce was killed in Italy in the invasion of Sicily in 1943. And in the 1960s, Jesse did go back to Germany and meet with his son and tell him about his father, which is
Aw.
lovely. Yeah. Um, so Jesse Owens wins 4 gold medals. On August 3rd, he wins the 100-meter dash with 10.3 seconds. On August 4th, he wins the long jump. He wins at 26 feet 5 inches, which is still 3.25 inches short of his own world record. So he didn't beat himself, but he beat everybody else. On August 5th, he won the 200-meter sprint with a time of 20.7 seconds. The second place uh, silver medalist in that event was Mac Robinson, who was the older brother of Jackie Robinson. So the sporty family, the Robinsons. Um, in August 9th, he won his 4th gold medal in the 4x100-meter sprint relay. Him and another black runner replaced 2 Jewish runners. And it's a little bit of controversy, like why did he replace them at the very end? Usually they don't put their best runners in the relay because they were so good anyway that they were going to win no matter what, even if they weren't the very best. But also then like, why wouldn't you just put your best runners in the relay? So there's like a whole bunch of back and forth as to why. But either way, he got his 4 gold medal, and no one would get 4 gold medals in track until Carl Lewis did in 1984. So he did great in the Olympics. Came home with four gold medals, and yeah. Do you have a question? You looking at me weird?
Well, no, I'm like now, I was like actually looking up Usain Bolt, and
Hmm.
I mean, like I said before, like there's some sports where if you're the best at it, you are set, right? Like
Hmm.
Usain Bolt's gonna get 50,000 different contracts from
Yeah.
shoe companies to cereal company, all that stuff. What did this guy get?
Nothing.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking. I'm like, man, like
Hmm.
all this, like for
I'm
what?
going to tell
Like,
you what he got. He got nothing. Yeah. I mean, today, I think I wrote this down. Everybody would be wearing Jesse Owens track shoes. Like
yeah.
he'd have all of the endorsements. It'd be a huge deal. But yeah, no. So, um, at the end of the Olympics, Hitler was embarrassed that all white people didn't win, which is great because he sucks. But Jesse Owens doesn't like have a full-time job. He's still in college. So he's in college during the 1936 Olympics. He goes back to Ohio State, and this whole time he's been in college. There was like a semester where he wasn't allowed to be on the track team because his grades were failing, and I'm like, when does this man have time to go to class?
Right.
Like he's a father. He has jobs. He is on the track team, but he also is going to school. After the games are over, he gets sent around Europe to do like exhibitions with the team, but he doesn't make any money from that. It's sort of like a way for the American Olympic Committee to like make back some of the money they spent, but it doesn't go to the athletes. He does take a few, he gets offered some things, like some big endorsements, but they're all not real. They're just to like get in the paper, to be like, oh, we offered Jesse Owens $50,000, but they don't, no one really like was going to follow through on that. He does take a couple low-level endorsements, which means that the amateur league kicks him out and now he can't run anymore. Like he just like can't win. Like there's just no we're waiting for him. When he gets back to New York, like literally the day he gets back to New York, him and his wife can't get a hotel room because no one will let him in because he's black. Finally, the Hotel Pennsylvania lets them stay, but they have to go in through the service entrance. So he comes home, and this is actually something that I just saw via my algorithm on Instagram, but History Channel has a new show that just premiered this week about what happened when he gets back because he gets back and he's just a black guy in racist America.
Yeah.
Like it doesn't matter that he was an Olympic hero. Um, he works at gas stations. He would race horses. Like he would run a track next to a horse. Like the horse, he would get like a little bit of a head start and just like run next to each other. He said, quote, people say it was degrading for an Olympic champion to run against a horse, but what was I supposed to do? I had 4 gold medals, but you can't eat 4 gold medals.
Makes sense.
So
He's right.
he did a lot of work. He had a dry cleaner that failed. He did work at Ford for a while in the civil rights division. He campaigned against President Roosevelt. Um, he filed for bankruptcy in 1966 and got in trouble for tax evasion. So he was never rich. He never had a lot of money. Eisenhower sent him around the world as a goodwill ambassador, which is fun. So he became a speaker and would talk. He would speak at like colleges. He got an honorary degree from Ohio State, I think later. So he was like famous for those things, but it wasn't like lucrative. Um, when Jesse Owens was 35, he started smoking cigarettes, and that's what killed him. So he smoked a pack a day from when he was 35 until he died in 1980 of lung cancer. Um, and he is buried in Ohio, and he died on March 31st, 1980. Jimmy Carter said, quote, perhaps no athlete better symbolized the human struggle against tyranny, poverty, and racial bigotry after he died. Um, so after these Olympics, there wouldn't be another one. The Olympics in 1940 got canceled, in 1944 it got canceled, and then the next one would be in 1948 in London. But guess who wasn't invited?
Germany.
Yep, in Japan.
I mean, I don't feel bad for them.
I don't either. They were not invited. So I definitely there's a bunch of movies about Jesse Owens that look good. The book Triumph was really good. It's just like so exciting to see someone just be excellent at something and so insane to see them not get treated so terribly when they get home. It's such a big discrepancy. So next week we're gonna go from 1950 to 1980 and talk about stuff that happened um, during those Olympics.
So one thing on the Jesse Owens Wikipedia page that I found really fun and interesting is that in
Hmm.
the movie Get Out, the girl's dad who played, oh God, I forgot his name. He was on West Wing,
Yeah, Bradley, I think.
something. Anyways, he's like the bad guy. He apparently said that he lost a qualification round to Jesse Owens in 1936. And that is when he started researching how to replace his brain with the brain of a black person. Crazy, right?
Yeah. That movie's wild. I should watch that again.
It's pretty good.
Yeah.
Um, Fun. Well, that's
Yeah.
well, not fun. It's not good. But
It's wild. I mean, and I recommend watching Olympia. Though just like having it's not aren't a lot of words in it. It's mostly just like sounds, but watching that Jesse Owens and Lutz Long do the long jump is really cool.
I'm sure. I'm sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, looking at the pictures of them, it's it kind of speaks to what you mentioned before, which is like the whole point of the Olympics, was bringing people together. But
Hmm.
and that's kind of how I always felt like on a political level too. It's like if the people could talk to each other without the governments, then the
Yeah.
people would be fine. It's the
Yeah.
governments getting in the middle of it that causes issues.
I agree.
And that relationship he had with that guy Louis Long was a good example of that.
Yeah. That's cute.
Sweet. So
Yeah.
our four-parter is down to two more parts.
Hmm.
We're gonna kick this off again next week. And which parts are we getting to next week?
So I know something happened in 1960. So I have a book that I'm going to read. Um, what is it called? It is called, it's about 1960 in Rome. It says, let's see, I have my thing here. Oh, it says Rome 1960, the Olympics that changed the world. I don't know how it changed the world. I'm going to read that book and tell you. And then I'm also going to talk about the Munich
Oh,
massacre.
I was gonna ask about the Munich
Yeah.
one. That movie
Um,
is amazing.
I know. I don't think I've seen it, but I think I should
It
obviously see it
is
for this.
very, very, very well done. I want to
Yeah,
say, was it Spielberg that did it? It
I
stuck
think
my
so.
memory. Like it was one of
Yeah,
those movies that like just you just like every now and then are like, what was that memory of I have? And it's like, oh yeah, that thing, that movie.
yeah. 2005.
Yeah, it was Spielberg.
Yeah. Something else I wanted to tell you when you were talking about yours is the guy who wrote the book Chernobyl, that was like what the show was like based off of. Not like based off of, but like that book was like used to like do the HBO show. Just wrote a new book on the Challenger, and I'm on the list to get it.
Sweet.
From the library. I'm on in 14 weeks. I can listen to it. He wrote Midnight in Chernobyl, Adam Higginbotham. But I'm excited to read the Challenger book
Very
because
cool.
that's crazy.
I would do the space shuttle ones, but they're so I mean, it is so not obscure. Like everybody who's paid any attention knows every detail.
Yeah,
So,
I know.
um,
Excited to read that.
well, Taylor, thank you for sharing.
Yeah.
And we have plenty more Olympic news to look forward to in the next 2 weeks.
I haven't heard anything about the um Hoop in the Sun yet. Oh, we almost watched the Sun movie last night. I think we'll watch it tonight, the shark one.
It's so stupid. You'll love it.
I can't wait.
And hopefully by the time we join you again, those two poor bastards on the International Space Station are on their way home.
Godspeed. Because
Godspeed. Seriously.
I wonder what they're doing right now. They have like cards. Like, what are they doing? Is there just the two of
Nothing.
them?
Nothing. They're just like praying that this all works out.
I wonder what their internet speed is up there. I can download our show.
Um. Anyways, anything else to say, Taylor?
That's it. No, thank you so much. If you need anything, have any ideas for us, we're at doomedtofellpod@gmail.com. Find us on social media and please, please, please review us on Apple Podcasts because that helps people find us. I'm also doing a TikTok every day and some person was like, I love this. And they downloaded all of our episodes. So we got like a huge bump
Oh,
in downloads one day. So that was super exciting. So
thanks,
I will
person.
be continuing to do that forever.
Thank you, person, and
Yeah.
Taylor.
Thanks. Try my best.
Awesome. Okay, well, I'll go ahead and cut it off.
In the matter of the people of the state of California versus Orenthal James Simpson, case number BA096.
And so, my fellow Americans, ask not what your country can do for you. Ask what you can do for your country.
There we go. We are back up and running. My audio is probably going to be kind of crappy because I'm in Dallas, but that's the way it goes. Hi, Taylor. How are you?
I'm good. How are you? You're also like laying in bed, like
I know.
very relaxed.
I know. I just like, what's the point? Why am I going to get up and go sit in an office? I'm just going to be holding the laptop this way instead of on a desk. So,
That's fair.
anyways,
That's fair.
how's your weekend?
Pretty good. I slept all day yesterday. And then today, my family's going to see Planet of the Apes, and I'm jealous, but I couldn't make it because I had to do this. Womp womp.
That would have been
Anyway,
fun.
I know. Happy to be here with you.
Yeah, I'm sure this is so much better than being in the movies.
Um, all right, well, want me to intro us?
Yes, yes. We
Hello.
decided that you're way better at this than me.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to Doomed to Fail. We are the podcast that brings you history's most notorious failures and epic disasters twice a week, every week. I'm Taylor, joined as always by Fars. Hello,
I'm
Fars.
Fars.
And I just got mad at Fars because he wants to talk about the debate, and I just don't think that it's over yet, and I just don't want to talk about it. It's like all I've talked about for the past like 6 days with people, and I'm just like, I can't.
It's going to be a bit of a disappointment for you because I'm going to be discussing presidential debates later.
Oh, perfect. Are you doing Nixon Kennedy?
No, no, no.
That's like all people talk about this week.
No, I'm kind of exaggerating only a little bit. I'm really talking about presidential races and
Hmm
the way things have worked out. I'm gonna address one specific campaign, But I'm not going to spoil it because I think you go first this week.
I do. I
There we
do,
go.
and I'm going to continue talking about the Olympics. Um, if you log into our Instagram as us, all of our algorithm is just Olympics, and it's very, very fun. There's like trials happening right now. There's divers. There's videos of like divers' parents crying because they're so excited. There's people breaking records. Everyone's really fit. It's very exciting. So everyone's in trials right now, getting ready to go to Paris. Well, I had to buy two pairs of new jeans. So I bought new jeans from Old Navy because I don't know. I still feel like that is where I buy jeans. And I bought a Team USA sweatshirt. And then I was like, I have too many sweatshirts. But I was like, I would literally never wear one of those Old Navy 4th of July t-shirts. But I was like, I will 100% wear an Old Navy Team USA sweatshirt for no reason. So that's coming because I'm very Olympic out right now.
Isn't it like
Like
100 degrees where you were?
it is, yes.
Okay,
But
so you just have to
I
wear
keep it
the.
cold in here,
Got it.
cold and expensive in this house.
Got it. Got it.
Um, and I don't care. My friend at work, we have like weekly presentations, and sometimes it's about work. It's about like data and the internet or whatever. But then sometimes it's about fun stuff. So I actually did our Able Archer 83 episode on I did it for my work. I like had a presentation and like did it again. And then my friend Taylor at work, she did one this week about Mothman and other cryptids. And I to support, I made a tinfoil hat. So my husband walked by the office and it's like pitch dark in here because I keep it really dark. And I have my Satanic Temple candle lit and I'm staring at the computer and I have a tinfoil hat on. So it's a great picture. It really encapsulates what's going on
A
in this
lot going on
office.
there. Yeah.
He said it to my family. He was like, I don't know.
We'll just keep this door closed from now on.
Yeah. Um, so, um, yeah, it's a lot. I don't know how I got there. Oh, because it's cold in here and I bought a sweatshirt. But anyway, let's talk about the Olympics again. And this story is fucking horrible. So I apologize to literally everyone that I have to tell you this. Um, we talked about the origins of the Olympics. We talked about ancient and the modern. Last week, we talked about Hitler's 1936 Olympics and Olympics up to 1950. So today, we're going to do Olympics from 1950 to 1980. There's some fun things, there are some bad things, and there is a very, very, very bad thing. And I've been like kind of sick to my stomach for the past couple days
I'm
learning
kind of
about it.
nervous. You're kind of setting this up the way I set up the Tote family murders. Like,
It's really fucking, honestly, the most terrible thing, one of the most terrible things I've ever heard. So I watched a bunch of videos. I couldn't find like a really, like the book that I wanted to read. Like I wanted a book about this and I couldn't really figure it out. I couldn't get Vengeance, which is the book that the movie Munich was based off of. It didn't come in audiobook and like, I don't have time to actually like sit down and read a book with my eyes. So I listened to another book, and then a book about the 1960 Olympics, and then a bunch of videos that I'll share in the notes. Um, Oh, my first thing is, okay, this has been an awful week for me. I think this might be why. I've been like depressed and sad all week, and this might very, very well be why. But let's talk about some fun things or other things that happened in the Olympics before we get to Munich in 1972. Um, every Olympics, and I'm sure I'm going to miss some of the highlights, has like really heroic, exciting things. Everything has a political undertone, which we know. I think that like the dream of Pierre Coubertin was like this will be something that transcends politics, just athletes and the beauty of sport, and it's not that, and it can never be that. It's always going to be something political happening. But a couple fun things. I'm gonna list where the Olympics were, and then some things that happened that were fun. So in the 50s, the Winter Olympics were in Oslo, Norway, and in those games, Emil Zapotec of Czechoslovakia won the gold in the 5,000 meter, 10,000 meter, and the marathon, which has never been repeated before. So he's like a runner, which is cool. Or again. Then they were in Finland, and they were in Italy. In 1956, the Summer Olympics were in Melbourne. The equestrian events were in Stockholm, Sweden, which led me to search, how the fuck do the horses get to Paris? And the answer is very, very fancy planes.
really?
And yeah, so for all of the equestrian events, like I think I mentioned this um, in the first episode on the Olympics, but they're going to be at Versailles, which is like real cool. So like in front of Versailles in like the gardens, they're making the whatever for the horses to like jump and shit. But the horses get there, through Europe, they can probably take a train, but from everywhere else, they have to take like really nice, really fancy airplanes
Once
to
again,
get there.
showing that many of these Olympic sports are just for the everyman to do.
I actually also just like my husband was sharing me a story of a man who had like taken a little boat across the Pacific, and he was like, "Oh, he did it. He got there in like 46 days." And I said, "That sounds like some rich kid shit." And he said, "Looks like his parents are rich." And I was like, "Yeah, poor people aren't doing that." Like that's the guy was like, it was an interview with him, and he was like, "Yeah, dude, I was like worried," and I was like, "Ugh, I just hate that rich people
You can
shit."
probably get like sponsorships. I mean, I don't
Ugh.
think Greta Thunberg is like a millionaire, but like she takes like a private yacht everywhere or sailing yacht or something. She wants to do carbon neutral. So I think that she just gets sponsored by a bunch of like
To sail everywhere.
environmental groups.
I
Yeah.
love that about her. Um, so anyway, exactly. Equestrian events for the everyday folk. In Melbourne, also, a couple countries had boycotted that due to political reasons. There was a Suez Canal crisis, and the Soviet invasion of Hungary. So things were happening in the 50s and 60s, obviously. The 60s is going to be the Cold War. The Winter Olympics in 1960 were in Squaw Valley, United States. And in the summer, they were in Rome. So I read a book called 1960 Rome, the Olympics that changed the world. And like after I was done reading it, I realized that I read the abridged version and I was like, did they abridge the world changing out of it? Because I didn't really see it. Like I
Changing
didn't
out of changing out of what?
out of the book. Like I didn't see any world changing in the book. It was just like a typical Olympics. But whatever. I read the whole book and I learned a lot about the 1960 Olympics.
It's not a
Obviously,
grandiosity added to like this feat of, I don't know, it's probably one of those
eh,
things.
it's fine. Like they one thing that is fair, the USSR, they hosted the trials in 1960 and they were calling out the racism in the United States, which is absolutely fair because it was, the 1960s. Cassius Clay was there for the first time. He's obviously going to become Muhammad Ali. And as all accounts are, he was very full of himself and like very excited. Another fun story is that he screamed the entire flight there because he didn't want to do it and he was scared, which is
Wait,
fun.
you didn't, oh, you didn't want to fly. Okay.
Yeah, you want to fly. It's the Cold War. I'm not going to talk about doping at all, I think, during this series, but one of the big things that happened at the very first day of the 1960 Olympics, Knud, 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 you know, Jensen, he was, must have been from Sweden or Norway. He was competing in the 100-kilometer team trial on his bicycle, and he passed out and died, and he had traces of amphetamines in his blood. So that was like one of the it happened before, but it was like a first like really high profile thing where someone had died and potentially had done it because they were doping. And I know that like there's also like when Lance Armstrong was doing it, they were like getting new blood every day,
Oh yeah,
like really weird,
yeah.
like really weird shit. So that happened in 1960. Ethiopia was there, and that was a big deal because they had been invaded by Italy, but they were there in Italy for the games, and Ethiopian Abibe Bikila won the marathon with no shoes on, which is incredible because Rome is very cobbly. And he did it again in Tokyo the next year, which is super cool. Or the next time. The
Why
boxing
did
fine,
Italy invade Ethiopia for?
um, land,
Weird. Do
yeah,
you know that or are you just saying that?
resources, probably. I don't know.
Weird. Okay.
I can look up later. There are the boxing finals where the US versus Italy and the Italians were getting really rowdy and everybody was like kind of mad. And Bing Crosby stood up and sang the Star Spangled Banner to calm everybody down, which would totally work. And I love that because he has such a beautiful voice. So I love that. And then also in 1960, there's a lovely story about a track team of Black women called the Tiger Bells. And Wilma Rudolph was the first American woman to win 3 gold medals, and she won it in track and field during 1960. So that was really fun. I feel like it was world changing, but like fun stuff happened in 1960 in Rome. 1964, they were in Tokyo. That was the first in Asia and the first televised via satellite. So that was the first time you could actually see it. Um, you know, not live, but like near live or like the same day. In 1968, it was in Mexico City, Mexico, where there were also a bunch of high altitude records were broken because Mexico City is high. I think it's also a mile high, just like Denver.
It
Did you
is.
tell me
Yeah.
that?
Yeah, it's one of those things. I watch a lot of like fighting stuff, and anybody who goes to Mexico City when they have an event, like they always just
Mm.
gas out immediately. And it's like, what just happened? It's like, oh, they're in Mexico City. That's
Oh,
what
it totally
happened.
makes sense. Yeah. Um, you can talk about how Barack Obama did that shitty debate in Denver.
Was it the Mitt Romney one?
Yes.
I should. I should.
Um, so another thing that happened in 1968, the summer, was the Black Power salute. Do you remember that?
Yes. Yes.
So Tommy Smith and John Carlos, they won the 200 meter. They were gold and bronze. They raised their fist in a Black Power salute. The other guy who won silver was an Australian named Peter Norman. He obviously seems he got it. He was like, I'm not going to do that because I'm a white guy, but they all wore human rights badges. He was definitely like in solidarity with them. Um, Tommy Smith said later, quote, "We were concerned about the lack of black assistant coaches, about how Muhammad Ali got stripped of his title, about the lack of access to good housing, and our kids not being able to attend the top colleges." So, it kind of brought that to the forefront, and that was a big deal as well. Into the 1970s, in 1972, the Winter Olympics were in Sapporo, Japan. In the summer, they were in Munich, which we'll talk about in length in a second. But one other fun thing that happened in Munich. Nope, the only not other. A fun thing that happened in Munich in 1972 was
Nice recovery.
yeah, no, Mark Spitz was the American swimmer. He won 7 gold medals and he set world records with each one. And I just want to note that he had a mustache.
Yeah, I know Mark. I actually do know what Mark Spitz looks like.
But like, don't you feel it's funny that he had a mustache? Like, isn't
I
the
mean,
idea now to be as hairless as possible?
he probably
But it
could
was
have
the
won
70s and he
eight.
was like, I have to have a mustache. It's the
This is like
70s.
my identifying characteristic and trait. All my
If I
powers.
didn't have this,
What if his power is in the mustache?
I think it is in the mustache.
I think
I
so
think that
too.
maybe that was it. Maybe it was like pulling him forward somehow. Um, so I thought that was lovely. The 1976 Winter Olympics were relocated from Denver. Ended up being in Innsbruck, Austria. A couple years before, Denver was like, no, 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 we can't do this because it was just like too fucking expensive. And the
Yeah,
people were like,
good.
stop doing this. So they stopped and Austria was like, we'll take it. Um, the 1976 Summer Olympics were in Montreal, Canada. Romanian gymnast Comenci scored the first perfect 10 in Olympic gymnastics, and she won 3 gold medals, which is fun. And this is also where Caitlyn Jenner won the gold in the decathlon. Um,
No way.
and yes, and the decathlon is fucking insane. So read about it a little bit in the 1960 book, and just to tell you what the decathlon is, it's a 2-day event, and it's a point system. So you could have like something you're really good at and something that you're not very good at. But on the day one, you do the 100 meters, the long jump, the shot put, the high jump, and the 400 meters. On day two, you do 110-meter hurdles, discus throw, pole vault, javelin throw, and 1,500 meters. It's just like the 2 most exhausting days you could possibly think of.
It kind of reminds me of field day in elementary school, which is like the funnest day
Yeah, exactly.
ever.
I don't know, hopefully you get popsicles at the end of it
Oh
because
yeah,
you're
we
like,
did.
it's really fucking
Yeah.
hard. Oh no, I mean the decathletes. I know you did.
Oh,
Um, the last Olympics of like this time period, the 80s Summer Olympics were in Moscow and several countries, including the United States, did not attend, which led the Soviet Union to win most of the medals, which makes
yeah, makes
sense
sense.
if you think
Yeah.
about it. So next week we'll talk about 1984 because there's a lot of stuff with Los Angeles in 1984 that resulted in the way that LA is policed that kind of ties sort of set the stage for like race riots of the 1990s. So we'll talk about that, and then also the Atlanta bombing. So that's where we'll end, I think, next week because it's a lot. I feel like I'm really
That's a lot.
overwhelmed.
Yeah.
I'm overwhelmed by these stories. So let's talk about Munich and what happened in 1972.
Is Munich the thing you were prefacing this with?
Yes,
Okay.
this is the bad thing. This is okay. Ultimately, this is a revenge story. This is a story of revenge for all sorts of wrongs and revenge after revenge after revenge. We have not talked
It's
about
still
Israel.
happening right now.
Exactly. So we have not talked about Israel and Palestine because like this is a fun podcast and who cares what we think. It seems to me that anti-terrorism becomes terrorism very, very quickly. And an eye for an eye for an eye for a thousand eyes, it's always going to lead to innocent people dying, and that's what this does. Innocent people are going to die all over this story. The families of the murdered athletes in 1972, they wanted the truth, they wanted justice, and they wanted help. They wanted to be compensated for their loss. There were huge,
Well, are you gonna get
huge,
into what happened though? Like
yeah,
what
yeah.
the, okay.
I'm just prefacing like what
Okay.
I want to share about like this. Like they didn't want revenge. They wanted justice. They wanted to know what happened, and they wanted money because like their their husbands were had been killed, and it was a ton of people's fault, and they didn't get any of that. Eventually, they would get a little settlement in like the 2004, I think, but they didn't get like what they deserved out of this. But they did not want revenge. They were like that will only lead to more innocent people dying, and it did. So. I just wanted to like start with that. Like there was huge errors on behalf of anyone, but this is just like revenge is for revenge, and there are absolutely no winners. So the 1970s sounds fucking terrifying. There are so many terror groups around the Middle East and Europe, and they're like very, very active. There's the Red Army from Asia, there's the Baader-Meinhof from Germany, the Muslim Brotherhood, which is the predecessor to Hamas, the IRA. It's like a fucking scary time. In the 50s and the 1970s, there was a plane hijacking one every 5 days.
It's nuts.
Like, would you, what? Like, there have been zero for many, many years now.
Yeah, but that's probably not like in the US, right? Like that's
No,
probably
but all around Europe, you
yeah.
know? So in 1969, there were 86 hijackings. In 1970, there were 78. So your Idi Amin story with the hijacking is part of the like revenge part of the
Yeah,
story
yeah.
that I won't even get into, but like that kind of shit was happening all the time, which is like crazy. So there's like a lot going on, like a lot of tension in Europe and in the Middle East. Like in part of the revenge story, people are going to get shot in like cafes in Italy, like
Yeah,
there's
yeah.
tons of going on. So to preface, which is like not at all doing it justice, but a lot is going on here. Yasser Arafat is the president of the PLO, which is the Palestinian Liberation Organization. He would lead a nationalist party that he founded in 1959. Their goal was to destroy Israel. They still exist, although in 1993 they said their goal was for Arab statehood for Palestine. The prime minister of Israel was a woman, which I find interesting, named Golda Meir. And in 1970 to 1971, so in like the immediate prelude to the Olympics, there was a Jordanian civil war that was led by the PLO. And this is a long story, but like Jordan's involved, Gaddafi is there, Egypt's involved, Israel's involved. Like one day they hijack a Swiss Air flight, a TWA flight, and a Pan Am flight, and they bring them all to one airstrip and blow them all up. And like this is a really dramatic thing. No one died, no one was in the planes, but they blew them all up after the hijackings. So just like a wild time to be alive. And in September of that year, the worst of it, and that became known as Black September. And a whole bunch of stuff happened during Black September, but just remember those words together, and we'll talk about them in a second. So all of that stuff is happening, as always, in the background. But think about the Germans in 1972. They are like, everything is fucking fine. We are great. Look how fucking nice we are. So the German Olympics in Munich, they called them the Olympics of peace and joy. They were like, do you remember the last Olympics? We do not. No, no, no. They were like, everything is wonderful. Everything is fine. So because of that, and then Fars, you'll remember last time that we talked, in 1936 in the Winter Olympics, like everyone wore their like SS uniforms, and people were like, "That's a little much." So in the summer, they were like trying not to show that they were like SS people, but they were like very clearly the SS.
Yeah, of course. Can't
You
really
can't
hide that.
hide that. So in 1972, there is almost zero security. The cops and the Olympic security do not have guns. They have nothing. They wear these like powder blue suits, and they're like everything's fine, and there's not very many of them. So some people had the assumption that like behind the scenes there was more security and they were just hiding, but that wasn't true. There was really like almost no security. at the Olympics.
It literally just dawned on me that this is Germany, like 30 years after.
It's so not that long ago,
So not that
like
long ago. Yeah.
from it exactly. So yeah, it's 1972. Like, I mean, they're like barely repairing, it's just
Yeah,
like
not even
crazy.
30 years ago. It's like 23, 4 years ago or something.
So there's like everything's fine. Um, so they are, that is, that's the mood in Germany, is that they are okay. So it's 36 years. It's been 36 years since 1936.
Got it.
I just did the math because I think
Thank you
like that
for,
doesn't sound right.
I'm gonna have to cut this
Um,
out.
so um, they're like everything's fine. We're fine. Every country did have their own like security team that would go beforehand and be like everything seems fine. The Israeli security, they seemed to be more worried about the security of their press than the athletes themselves. And they seemed not concerned either. One of the coaches did go early and he said, this is not safe for our athletes. The Israeli team, the women were somewhere else, but the men's team was in an apartment on 31 Connolly Strasse. They were in apartments 1 through 5 in the Olympic Village. So they had 5 apartments. They were all first floor apartments, but they were 2-story um, apartments, and they housed the some wrestlers, some fencers, and a lot of coaches as well. So one thing that was if you look this up, you're going to see pictures of someone looking over a balcony. And that was confusing to me for a second because the first thing you also see is that it was a first floor apartment, which seems very, very unsafe, but they were 2-story apartments.
Got
So
it.
that's why. Um, I was confused
Yeah,
by
that
that.
is a scary picture.
Of the guy with the mask on. Yeah,
It looks like the strangers.
I know. I'll tell you what he was doing in a second. You'll be like, Jesus fucking Christ. That's what you'll say when we get there. Um, so there was no security, like I said, and the door to this part of the apartment block was always left open because it also led to the apartment garage. Or I'm sorry, the car garage, the parking garage. So you could always get in. Like you'd always get up to the door of the apartment. So this is terrible. It is a long operation to get the people from the PLO who are a group called Black September. That's the name that this specific terrorist cell gives themselves as Black September in relation to the war that had happened the year before. They had spent some time like faking passports and getting into the country. At one point, in one of the airports in Germany, there was a couple and they had 5 bags and they got pulled over by security and security was like, what's in your bags? Open them. And they were like, no, we don't want to, whatever. And then they opened up he's like, which bag do you want to open? And then the guy pointed to one, opened it up, and it was full of lingerie, So the Germans were like kind of embarrassed and they like closed it and they're like, fine, you can go. The other 4 suitcases were full of AK-47s. So like they just were shit lucky that those weren't the ones that they saw. And that's like, and then they took the 4 suitcases, put them in lockers in the train station in Munich, and then they like went on to the next person. So it was like one thing after a thing to get the guns, to get the people there, and it all culminated on September 4th, 1972. So the athletes who I will tell you all of their names, they were out in Munich seeing Fiddler on the Roof, which is fun. They went to a show. They saw a very famous person who played like the lead role. It was a mix of athletes and coaches. One of the doctors that was a team doctor, his 13-year-old son had asked to stay in the Olympic Village with the athletes, and he said no, and the son was really mad, and he didn't stay there, which is like obviously saved his life, but is really just like a gross side story, you know?
Yeah.
Um, so at 4:30 a.m., 8 members of Black September scaled the fence, which was only 6 feet high,
Okay.
and got
Can I
into,
pause? Can I pause?
yeah,
How do they know? Were they trying to still? I saw the movie Munich, but I saw it like I was in college. I remember only that Steven Spielberg directed it
yes,
and Eric Bana was in it,
they knew who they were going after. They wanted to go after the Israelis. That was the point.
and they knew they were there.
Yes. They had
Okay.
spent a lot of time like sneaking around where they didn't really have to sneak around. They could just kind of like walk in and see, and they knew exactly where they were staying. They had a set of copied keys to the room. They were like ready. They were
Got
dressed in
it.
tracksuits and they had all of their, excuse me, all of their stuff, like their weapons. So they specifically wanted to target the Israelis, and I'll tell you what they wanted, what their demands were. But they scaled the thing. Two drunk Canadians helped them. Like, isn't their fault. They were like helping them get over it because it was like just imagine that everybody like, couldn't get in, and it was 4:30 in the morning. Um, they had stolen keys and they opened the door. So one of the a wrestling referee named Josef Gutfreund, he heard a noise. And you might remember this from the movie. Because of like one of the clips that I saw, I just couldn't watch it because I'm just so upset. But he heard the noise, went to the door, saw them opening it, saw men behind the door wearing like ski masks, and threw his body against the door to try to stop them from coming in. Gutfreund was 300 pounds, like a really big guy, and he was tried his best to keep them out. He d doing that allowed enough time for his roommate, weight coach Tuvia Skakowski, to escape through a window. So he went running out to start to try to tell people what was going on, and tried to. I think he ended up at a hotel like, calling people, tried to figure out like what to do. But there was no like security patrol that could have helped him. There's like no one
Yeah.
there that should have been there. Um, Coach um, Moshe Weinberg fought them as soon as they got in. He started fighting the terrorists. They shot him in the cheek, and he lived from that shot. It was a terrible, obviously, like through it went through his face. And then he did a very brave thing that like makes me want to cry. The the terrorists asked him where the next group of Israeli athletes were, and he said because they were in apartment one. And he said, they're not in apartment two, they're in apartment three. And he walked them past apartment two to apartment three, because apartment three was where the bigger guys were. That's where the wrestlers and the weightlifters were. So they think that that's what his thought was like, hopefully these guys can stop them, which is like, I don't know, it just like gives me the chills and makes me want to die.
He
Um,
got shot in
he,
the face with an AK-47.
yeah, or some sort of gun. Probably not
Okay,
that because
okay.
it,
Yeah, his
um,
head would have exploded, I bet.
yeah. Um, because he was able to do that and kind of like at least the big guys in apartment three, they were startled awake, so they weren't really ready to like help. It was very confusing. The last guy to escape was weight coach Tuvia Skakowski. Wait, he escaped. Wait, one more person escaped. Gad Tosabari, a wrestler. He got to escape as well. So two guys escaped. He was the last person to escape. Weinberg is going to be shot and killed almost immediately after this, after they gather everybody together in an apartment. And I think that this is the body that they show, like the press and show people to be like, we're serious about this. Like, we're actually killing people in here. Um, Weinberg's son, Guri, plays him in the movie Munich.
Oh wow.
He was born on August 1st, 1972. So he never met his father. His father died when he was a month old.
That's crazy.
Isn't that
That's
crazy?
sad.
It's so sad. I don't know what to do. Um, Another person that was killed in the apartments, weightlifter Yosef Romano, was so cute. He's just like cute. He's big. He has this like curly hair and these big, fun 70s um mutton chops. And he had three little girls, and he was killed trying to fight. He was on crutches because he had just hurt like a ligament in his leg during one of his like last weightlifting competitions. But he tried to fight. He ended up being his body was mutilated, he was castrated, and his body was like put at the feet of everybody else, and they had to sit next to his dead body all day long. So the people that were there, the terrorists, I think there were eight or nine of them. Some of them, guy who was in charge, his name was Lutif Afif, but they called him Isa. So the names are Isa, Tony, Paulo, Salah, and Abu Hala. Those are their like fake names that they used. So you saw they wore like a lot of like ski masks and face masks so that people couldn't see who were. They would kind of stand outside on the balcony with their guns and they knew that they were there and they were trying to negotiate with the German police. What they wanted was the release of 200 Palestinian prisoners, as well as some Red Army prisoners from different jails around the world. This was going to be something that was like really hard to do. They were in a bunch of
It's like
different places, you
it's
know?
like Air Force One.
Yeah. Like they wanted something that was like nearly impossible. They said the first deadline was like 9 a.m., but that was impossible. And they kept moving it, and they ended up being there kind of all day long. Um, the Germans fucked up so hard during this entire thing. Even though this was a huge deal, they didn't get the federal German like government to help. Bavaria didn't necessarily have to do that based on the rules. So they used like the Bavarian government and law enforcement to negotiate, but nobody was really a hostage negotiation person. Like they didn't have anyone who was actually like qualified to be doing these things. One thing that they do, and so the picture that you see on the cover of the book One Day in September, and the one that you just looked up with the person on the balcony, with the guy in the tracksuit with the mask and his gun on the balcony looking up, was because the freaking Germans on in the afternoon, they had an operation called Operation Sunshine, which was to have snipers at different places all around around the apartment to try to shoot them. But this is literally being broadcast live across the world, and they had TV in the apartment. So what that guy is looking at is he's looking at the balcony being like, "Are you guys fucking kidding me? I know there's a sniper up there. I can see him on TV."
That's the guy in the
Yeah,
hoodie or whatever it is,
yeah,
the mask.
yeah. He's
Mm,
saying like, "I know they're there. I can see them on TV." Like they didn't
yeah.
turn the TV off for any reason. So like they knew so that like a total blumber, but didn't work at all. They tried to sneak cops in with the food, but they're like, "No, we're not gonna let you do that. Like obviously they're gonna have you like drop the food and then we're gonna bring it in. Like they're not gonna like do a thing." For some reason, Walter Troger, who's the mayor of the Olympic Village, got to go in the apartment and see the hostages. And he was like, "Are you guys okay?" And he was like, "They seemed very resigned to their fate." And I'm like, "Help them. Like,
Well, help
what
them
is
how?
happening?" You know what I mean? Like,
What's
help
that guy
them.
supposed to do?
I don't know. Like, why was he even like allowed in there? It was just such a weird thing to have happen. Um, And meanwhile, the Olympics are going on. There will be a 36-hour break, but eventually Avery Brundage, who is the president of the IOC, asks them to continue, which I feel like makes sense.
I
Like try to,
I don't agree with that. I think like this is a big deal. Like there's athletes like can't. I mean,
I know everybody else is already there. I mean, obviously like the rest of the Israelis went home, but like I don't know. But I think even worse than that is like while it's happening, you can see in like the news reports that like 200 yards away, there's a like a green area with like a fake pond where athletes are like playing ping pong and sunbathing, you know? Like life is going on even in the Olympic Village while this is happening, which is pretty
so
wild.
wild. Yeah.
So the Germans do things like we're gonna get them a helicopter. They were like, fine, we want to be taken to an airfield, to be taken to an Arab country to continue these negotiations, you know? And the Germans were like, that's fine. You can definitely do that. That sounds great. So they wanted at first to get them there through the parking garage that was below, but then the guys were like, obviously, you're going to try to shoot us in this parking garage. So they like ended up getting on a bus and going to a smaller airfield that had helicopters and taking those helicopters to a larger airfield. The helicopters didn't have to go very far, but they made them they were full of gas. Like they filled them up with gasoline. Like they didn't have to do that, but they did. So they were like very flammable. Keep that in mind. So there's four hostages now left alive. They're on each of the different helicopters. They are taken to, it's 10 p.m., so it's dark. They're taken to the Fürstenfeldbruck air base. It's a NATO air base. They're taken there in helicopters. When they get there, the Germans have a 747 that's ready to take them like wherever they want to go. 747 has cops dressed like flight attendants, but it's like very clear that they're cops. Like they don't even change their pants. They just put on like a flight attendant jacket and like try to do it. And in the middle of it, they give up. Nothing even happens, but the cops in the plane quit and like leave. So at the time the terrorists get there, Issa, the main terrorist, gets there and he goes into the plane and he's like, "This plane is empty. Like, this is weird. We can tell that you all are lying to us." They also had snipers that were obviously like around the airbase, but none of them were actually snipers. They were guys who like maybe knew how to shoot a gun, but none of them were trained. None of them were snipers. They didn't know the thing to like coordinate with each other. Like there was like nothing. They were never ever going to shoot these guys. So now that they know that they're duped, it's chaos. Everyone starts shooting. So the terrorists are shooting, the Germans are shooting, and they end up throwing a grenade into one of the helicopters, blowing up half of the hostages, and the other half, Issa, the main terrorist guy, goes in and shoots them all point blank, really close, and kills them all with like the AK-47, and they all die in the helicopter. So all of the hostages died. Um, just to go through kind of who they are, again, and everyone who died in this. Um, the During the initial break-in, Moishe Weinberg and Yosef Romano, they were both killed. Later, killed by a grenade in the helicopter. They were seated from left to right. Zev Friedman, David Berger, Yakov Springer, and Elazar Hoflin. David Berger was actually an American, and he was competing as a weightlifter for the Israeli team. He was so young. He died of smoke inhalation. He didn't even die in the grenade blast. The next day, President Nixon called his parents and said, "What can I do for you?" And they said, "Can you bring him home?" And his body was flown to America, and everybody else was flown back to Israel, which is
Wow.
so sad. Shot, the people who were shot on the other helicopter, seated from left to right, Yosef Gutfried, Kaihat Shor, Mark Slavin, Andre Spitzer, Amit Sir Shapira. They were a wrestling referee, a shooting coach, a wrestler, a fencing coach, and a track coach. During the gunfight, a West German police officer named Anton Fliegerbauer was killed, and then five of the terrorists were killed in the fight at the Air Force Base, like in all of the chaos of the Air Force Base, including Issa, who was the leader. Um, Andre Spitzer's wife, he's a fencing coach. She is dope as shit. She's in one of those documentaries I watched, and she, speaks like seven languages, is like wildly smart, wildly on all of this, and she's the one who's going to fight for the families to have, um, any sort of justice, to get to know anything that actually happened. They don't tell them anything. And the saddest thing I think that happened is, I mean, one of the saddest things ever is that they were live on ABC, and they had said that everyone was okay, that they had gotten all of the remaining hostages out at the airfield. And that was the last thing that they said before they ended broadcast for the night, like the night before. So they said that, and some of the people celebrated, like the families across Israel and across the world were celebrating that the hostages had been let go. And some of the wives were like, "I will believe it when I hear his voice. He will call me as soon as he's okay. Like that will be the first thing that he does. I know he will call me." And then in the morning, Jim McKay on ABC, he, I don't know why, like, this like really, this has upset me so much this week. I don't even know what to do. But in the morning when they found out that everybody had died, Jim McKay on ABC said, "When I was a kid, my father used to say our greatest hopes and our worst fears are seldom realized. Our worst fears have been realized tonight. They've now said that there were 11 hostages. Two were killed in their rooms yesterday morning. Nine were killed at the airport tonight. They're all gone." And that's how the world found out that they had all died. Right away, Israel wants to avenge them. And like I said, the families don't want that. They want compensation for the shit job everybody did, keeping them safe. They want to know what happened, and they want justice. They want to know what happened in the last hours of the lives of these guys. Um, and they will fight for decades for this. Mrs. Spitzer will end up um, a like the Bavarian government tells her that they have no information about this, that they don't know anything that happened, and she will have like some person calls her like an informant says this information is in the archives in Munich. And then so she's like on the news talking to someone about it. Someone's saying that it's not true, we don't have it. She starts reading them some of the documentation that like she got sent by this person, and they're like, "Fine, we have it." And they had like 50 boxes of stuff that was just like talking about what had happened. That was all she wanted to know, like what had happened. Um, and then, in the aftermath of all of this, um, some of the terrorists are still in jail in Germany for a few months. They end up being taken back to Palestine because there's a hijacked Lufthansa flight, and they want to trade the three terrorists are in jail in Germany for the Lufthansa flight. But the Lufthansa flight only has 12 people on it, and they're all dudes, which is like very suspicious and doesn't make any sense.
Yeah.
So it's pretty clear that Germany was like, we don't want to deal with this anymore. Get them the fuck out of here. You know? And
So they weren't arrested.
they were.
They were arrested. Okay.
Yeah, they were in jail in Germany. Like one of them ran away. They found him like 40 minutes later. Some of them, the rest of them were
So
taken
yeah,
into
they're
custody on
being
the airfields.
extradited. They're being Germany wanted them extradited to get this whole mess out of their hands.
Yeah, and they did it through this like ruse of this like fake hijacking. They like had to do it,
Got
And
it.
they like traded Lufthansa plane for that. So they went back. Eventually though, the the thing to avenge these deaths is called Operation Wrath of God by the Israeli government. And they will go all over Europe. They will kill people who they think were like tangentially involved. They kill historians and professors who talk about this in ways that they don't like. They kill, at one point, a thing called the Lillehammer affair. They go to Lillehammer, Norway, which is like a really small town, and they think that they found one of the guys who's involved. They follow him around. They find that he works at like this small shop. He has a pregnant wife, and him and his wife seem totally normal. They go to the movies one night. They take the bus home. They're holding hands. She's very pregnant, and someone jumps out of a car and kills him, shoots him in the head. And he was totally the wrong person. He wasn't even the guy at all. And like so many things would have been like, that guy was married and had kids. Like, why would he also have this like pregnant wife there? Why wouldn't he have any security? Like all these things. Um, there are people who are like who know that they're targets and they will like, move every day and like try to do all these things. And one of the ways that they kill people, and they did it several people in the book that I read, they would put a bomb on their telephone in their apartment. They go to their apartment, break in, put a bomb on their phone, and then call them like at a weird time when they knew they were home. So they'd pick up the phone and go hello, and they would know that they were there, and then they blow up their phone and kill them,
Oh,
which is wild. So a lot of like car bombs, a lot of being like mafia style shot in restaurants, shot on the street. Um, many people will die for this. And I think I think that's the end of that, which is, I mean, I think there's like a lot more to the Operation Wrath of God and like the justice and all of that, but man, it's just a tragedy of so many
yeah.
levels.
It shows like how we get to where we are and
Yeah.
why. I was talking to someone like a strategist in politics,
Hmm.
and someone who's like in the weeds on this stuff, and like, listen, like the reality is this is never gonna get solved. Like, you can't unwind the tape that's already there. Like
Hmm.
there's just way too much water under that bridge for it
Hmm.
to ever get unraveled. And I don't,
Hmm.
yeah. And the thing is, like, how far back do you go to identify who was right and who was wrong?
Yeah.
Like, do you punish the the people, their grandparents, their great grandparents, their great great grandparents? Do you punish the Allied forces? Do you
Hmm.
punish like Germany still? Like, I mean, what do you? There's no
Yeah.
answer.
Yeah. I don't
So,
know. It's such a long story. It's just such a fucking sad story. Like those poor men, they were just had to sit there all day, knowing that they were going to die, knowing that no one was going to help them.
and this
And
guy Yosef Romano, the weightlifter, his
hmm
mom and brother apparently committed suicide after this.
ugh, so sad.
Yeah.
It's just such a horrible way to die and a horrible, you know, and I think I guess as we'll see in like other stories, like even though it wasn't a safe space in many ways, because like it was the 70s and there was no security and all these things, like it was supposed to be a safe space. It felt like a safe
Well,
space.
also there's a thing around how citizens, like when average people are being punished for their government's actions, it kind of touches on some things that we talk about every now and then. It's like the people aren't the government. Like
Hmm.
Iranians aren't like you talk to the average Iranian, they don't agree with any of the stuff that goes on in Iran,
Hmm.
but they can't vocalize that. They can't say that. All they can look
Hmm.
at is again, who do you punish? It was their great grandparents who ended up getting these people into office, right? And so
Hmm.
how do you punish the kids of that? So I don't
Yeah.
know. Touchy all
Yeah.
around subject,
Um,
but I'm glad you covered it because it's again, I saw the movie, but I saw it so long ago that I didn't really recall all the nuances. I forgot about the helicopter situation. Um,
yeah.
there's a lot to it.
Uh, there's also this just reminded me like really quickly, and I'm reading this. Um, so in did you ever watch Dairy Girls? It's like it's on Netflix. It's like a show about these um sweet girls in Derry, Northern Ireland, and they talk about a lot of Northern Ireland is during the time when like the all of like there's tons of terrorism in Northern Ireland and all these like terrible things were happening and they're Catholic and then there's like the Protestants and all these things. But at the very, very end, they do a vote to decide to like move on essentially. And it's like in the show they show it that like it's there's people that they know that were like in jail for being IRA terrorists and they're going to like be forgiven because they want the country needs to move on, you know? And it was like 71% of the people voted and they chose to move on. They're like, we need to get past this, you know? I don't know if that like worked, but it's like that reminded me of that, you saying that.
I think that until we get to the point where, I mean, we can probably get there if we get to the point where we have to be governed by AI and AI is making our decisions.
Honestly, I was thinking like the best thing would be aliens, maybe, but I don't even know if we could agree to fight aliens together. Um, maybe the nuclear war when we see each other again in 10,000 years when we can communicate across the world, we can be like, let's forget about it.
It says a
I don't
lot
know.
about our psyche that when you said aliens, my first thought was, I guess if like really smart beings landed here, we'd probably listen to them and they'd probably tell us to stop fighting. And your mind went to, how do we kill them?
No, 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 no. I
How do
mean, that's no, that's
we?
no, no, no. That's what I was thinking. I was thinking, well, yes, I guess that's right. Like, would we work together? Because they would probably try to kill us because we're stupid. Like, if I landed on a planet
Um,
full of idiots, I'd be like, you guys are idiots.
yeah, yeah,
And that's what this
yeah.
planet is full of. So, yeah. It just, I'm gonna do something fun after this is over. Like, I'm so excited for the Olympics and like I love all the sports stuff, but I'm just like, we can't have nice things, can we? You
It makes
pieces
you
of
feel
shit,
any, it makes you feel any better.
humans.
My episode is actually pretty fun, but given that you started this conversation by saying you don't want to hear anything about presidential debates, I don't actually think you're gonna have fun. I think you're actually gonna hate
I
this
no,
episode.
give me a break. I have a master's degree in political communication. The only thing we talk about is presidential debates. So I'm ready. Tell me what color tie Bill Clinton was wearing in 1992. I would love to hear that. Um, yeah,
I don't know.
I'm sure it
But
was blue. Um,
we'll get into it. So
um,
we'll leave it on a
yeah.
more upbeat note, I guess.
Uh, yeah, this is
Um,
sad. It's a devastating story.
yeah, yeah. Well,
I
hopefully
have
this
some listener
Olympics will be
mail.
eventless.
I know, I hope so too. I mean, knock on wood, just like have people just fucking run and do a great job and twirl and shit and let's do it.
Rolling shit.
There's a lot of videos of Simone Biles in slow motion, and I still can't figure out what the fuck she's doing in the air. It's so amazing.
Is she competing this year? I thought she
Yeah.
retired.
No, no,
Okay,
she's in it. Yeah.
nice.
So super excited. Yeah. Um, yeah, I have a listener mail
Okay,
from Morgan.
okay,
A bushel and a peck is from the musical Guys and Dolls, which I didn't know, but we talked about
okay.
that song. Yeah,
Yep.
very
Is
exciting.
that the mail?
Yeah. Because I told you I
Nice.
sang that song and you were like, I don't know what you're talking about. Do you remember that?
No.
You said the British measure things in bushels and pecks, and I said I sing the song
Oh,
a
that's
bushel
right.
and a
That's right. You
peck
did.
and two
You
kisses
did.
on the neck to my kids all the time, and you were like,
Yeah.
that sounds insane. And Morgan was like, that's from Guys and Dolls. So her grandma
Got
used to
it.
sing
Got
that to
it.
her too. So I didn't make that up.
That's the correlation is that you are into you actually know musicals and plays enough to have internalized some of the dialogue. but
Yeah,
not not the musical itself, and I just don't know any of it.
cool. Well, thank you, Fars. Thank you, friends, for listening. Please continue to tell your friends about us. Our website is up and running. You can go there, doomtofailpod.com, to sign up for our newsletter, to buy our merch, to see all of our episodes in different places to listen, learn a little bit about us on there as well. And then if you have any questions or suggestions, we're at doomtofailpod@gmail.com. And we also had someone ask if we ever have a call out to ask people about their own doomed to fail stories. So please tell us if you have a doomed to fail thing that happened, like maybe in your family, like a weird thing that happened to like get to you all to where you are. We'd love to know.
This all started with we were going to cover some of this, then we're going to ask people to call in with their own relationship doomed to fail, like when they started dating someone who was red flaggy. Well, did I just think of that and never vocalize it to you?
I don't know. We had a lot of ideas.
We have a lot of ideas. We're very smart people.
I'm going to go get a drink before you go and hope for a much less horrifying week this week
It's
than I
gonna be
had
good.
last week.
It's gonna be good. Okay,
Okay,
we'll go
bye.
ahead and cut it off. And
In the matter of the people of the state of California versus Orenthal James Simpson, case number BA097.
And so, my fellow Americans, ask not what your country can do for you. Ask what you can do for your
And we are
country.
back. Hi, Taylor. How are you?
Good, Fars. How are you?
I am doing well as always. Do you want to go ahead and introduce us before I start bantering?
Yes. Hello, everyone. Welcome to Doomed to Fail. We are the podcast that brings you history's most notorious disasters and epic failures twice a week, every week. And we had a story about serial killers from South America on Monday. And then today, I am going to finish my series on the Olympics. Are you excited?
I am very, very excited.
Yeah.
I will also note that we are waiting for a hurricane to hit Texas.
Ooh.
And
Mm-hmm.
so if you're in the path of the hurricane, get out of the path. Go somewhere else. Do something different. That's it.
Is it gonna hit? It's not gonna hit you. Is it gonna hit you? It's gonna rain. If you're
It's
like in
gonna it's gonna rain. If you're in
you're in
Houston, yeah, if
trouble.
you're like Houston, Galveston area, like it's not gonna be good. I think that like what we're gonna experience is gonna be a ton of rain, which is great. We need
Mm-hmm.
it, but
Mm-hmm.
yeah, hopefully it doesn't veer any further off. So TBD.
I mean, it is record hot here. It's like just if you can't even go outside. It's in the 110s.
Seriously?
It's terrible. So we're here. It is right now. It's 100 and it's 6 o'clock at night. Um, every day this week it's gonna be okay. It goes back to 90 next week. But every day this week is gonna be over 100. Today the high was 107. It's so
That
hot.
is worse than here, which is really weird. Usually we get it. Texas gets it worse, but
When it's humid there and it's not humid here. But Palm Springs is right now it's 111. Tomorrow's high is 117. Palm Springs is so hot.
it's so bad.
I'm like, I don't know how much longer can we go on like this?
It's, I mean, yeah, yeah.
You know,
Climate,
like
the
what do
climate
you
change
do?
stuff.
Yeah,
I
like is it
mean,
gonna just go up forever and then like we can't live here?
I think so. I think that's probably the most likely outcome, unfortunately.
Yeah. Oh, what a bummer.
But
We'll see what happens. But yeah, no, it's bad. Oh yeah, it looks like it's
um,
gonna yeah.
it looks like what?
Well, it looks like it's gonna rain for you tomorrow. This is so dumb. Sorry, everyone. Rain for you tomorrow, but that's it. It's only a 65% chance of rain. So
Still, can I claim to be a victim of this hurricane or no?
sure. Go ahead.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, and today, so yeah, we're gonna get into part 4 of Olympics. This is the last one you said, right?
Yeah. Yes, I can't do it anymore.
Has it been that trying for you?
Well, I just feel like I've learned a bunch of these are there's just like so much more that I would like to talk about, and I'm not gonna get to it, and that is a bummer, you know? But I'm
Yeah.
like with every Olympics, there's like all these little stories, so I'm not gonna talk about like all the doping scandals. I'm not gonna get to the Winter Olympics things like Cool Runnings and Nancy Kerrigan. Maybe in 2 years, in 2026, when they're having the Olympics in Milan, I can come back to those, you know?
Yeah, Nancy Kerrigan was a fun one.
Yeah, no, definitely we should talk about that, but like I didn't even not even gonna get to it. Um, because today, in our final installment, we're gonna talk about at the Atlanta bombing in 1996, and Richard Jewell, who is the man who was suspected of being bomber.
Poor bastard.
Poor bastard, Jesus. So we've talked about the origins of the Olympics. We talked about Pierre de Coubertin, who brought them back. It's kind of fun because now every book I read recaps what the Olympics are, and I'm like, oh, we already know all that, which is fun.
Nice.
We
Yeah.
know about the 1936 Olympics in Berlin. We know about the 1972 Olympics in Munich, and now we'll focus on 1996. So some of the things that happened between 1980, which is where we cut it off last time, and now, just to kind of go through what they had. In 1980, the Winter Olympics were in Lake Placid in the United States, and that was a miracle on ice. And I know there's a movie with, is it Kurt Russell
Probably.
where they win? I think it's called maybe called Miracle on Ice, but the
It
U.S.
is.
team beats the Soviet Union, and it's very exciting. In the 1984 LA Summer Olympics, actually, and so the 1984 Winter Olympics were in Sarajevo. The Summer Olympics were in LA, and those are the ones that I wanted to talk about just a little bit. So some fun things that happened there. Mary Lou Retton became the first American woman to win an individual all-around gold medal in gymnastics. So that's super exciting. She's like super cute, has like cute little 80s short hair. That was a big deal. There is a woman named Madeline De Jesus, and she had an identical twin sister who was also in the Olympics. And Madeline hurt herself doing the long jump, so she had her sister pretend to be her during the relay.
Seriously?
Just super fun. Yeah, and they got caught, and then they got the medal taken away. But like that's hilarious, and kind of fun. Um, the opening ceremony for the LA Olympics was in the what's it called? The Coliseum in by UCLA.
Yeah, that was
And
Muhammad Ali was the one who lit
yep,
it.
he lit it at the end. Um no, that was in Atlanta.
Was it? Okay. Sorry.
Yeah. Yeah. No, he did it in 1996, but I don't know who did it in LA. But there was a guy in a jetpack. I don't know if you've ever seen this video. Watch it later. Just Google 1984 Olympics jetpack. It's like it's so lame. He just like kind of goes up in the air like 10 feet and like moves around, and it's just like hilarious and like very fun. You can look it up now. Jetpack guy, 84 Olympics. Um, so I want to mention that like this in general because obviously, as you know, the Olympics are coming to LA again.
Hey,
Um,
is it so this is not a jetpack. So he's not actually being propelled by a jetpack. He's just on a string or a wire.
no, it's a jetpack, isn't it? Like from the
There's
bottom.
I mean there's no flames coming out of it.
I don't know this. I don't pretend to know the science, the schematics behind jetpacks.
Okay.
Ours.
Make,
Um,
got it.
but
We'll come back to this.
so the Olympics, as we know, is coming back to LA in 2028. And I found a website called NoOlympicsLA.com that goes over all the like, reasons why LA shouldn't have it. There's a lot of them, obviously, like we've talked about how having the Olympics, like a bunch of unhoused people get displaced. It doesn't really help the community. It costs a lot of money. The 1984 Olympics actually was one that like made some money for the city because they had just insane sponsorships and things that they hadn't had before. But there's also an article that I'll put into our sources from the nation. It's called Want to Understand the 1992 LA Riots? Start with the 1984 LA Olympics. So the gist is that the police got so much funding. So this is like a couple years, well, it's like a decade after Munich, but they want it to be like, you're safe because there's so many police here, right? So they were just like a huge police presence with tanks, with all this stuff. And the police became like very aggressive because they had so much money being funneled into them, and that would eventually lead to Rodney King,
Yeah. That's
like
I'm
indirectly.
on the No Olympics page
Yeah,
and that's yeah, what they're saying
yeah.
is likely going to happen this time.
So yeah, so it's fair to say that they were like worried that something might happen during that time. It went off without anything really terrible happening. There was a thing where, and this is important for our story, a police officer named Jimmy Wade Pearson discovered a bomb on a bus, and he like very heroically took it out of the bus and like ripped all of the cords off, like in a movie. But it wasn't a real bomb. He had planted it to be a hero. So
Oh, so there
that's
was some precedent for
yeah.
Jewel.
Yeah,
Okay, I didn't know that.
exactly. Yeah. So it had happened. It had happened recently and in the US. So just kind of remember that that had happened. So that's 1984. In 1988, the Winter Olympics were in Calgary, Canada. This is the Cool Runnings Olympics and the Eddie the Eagle Olympics. So like silly comedy movie Olympics, those happened then. Um, in the Summer Olympics in 1988, they were in Seoul, South Korea, and Ben Johnson won the men's 100-meter sprint, but he was disqualified for doping, giving the gold to Carl Lewis. And Carl Lewis is going to dominate track and field in like the next 4 to 5 Olympics. In 1992, they were in Albertville, France, and the Summer Olympics were in Barcelona, Spain. This was the dream team Olympics, when Michael Jordan and Magic Johnson got to actually and crew got to actually be in the Olympics. And also, I posted something about I have this amazing CD called Barcelona Gold and had all this like great 90s music on it. So that also happened during 1992. Not that that matters, but I thought it was really fun. Um, in 94, they were in Lillehammer, Norway. In 1996, they were in Atlanta, which we'll talk about in a second. Um, some fun things that happened during that one. I think the funnest is Carrie Strug. Do you remember when she did the vault with her hurt
Oh my
ankle?
God. Yeah.
How exciting that
No,
was. And
she
then
did the vault. Well, she landed in her ankle, right? Was that the one where
no,
she
it
like
was already
moved?
hurt.
Oh, it was
It was
okay.
already hurt. And then she landed on one foot because it was hurt, you know?
Yeah, I remember that.
And then like the coach carried her to get the gold, and it was like a whole thing. So that was super exciting and cute. Um, and then in 1988, I don't know where that was. In 2000, they were in Japan and Australia. Um, 2002, they were in Salt Lake City, so in the US. In 2004, the Summer Olympics were in Athens, Greece, and that's when Michael Phelps comes on stage. He won 6 gold and 2 bronze medals in his first Olympics. And then in 2008, they'll be in Beijing. Usain Bolt, that's his first Olympics. He won 3 gold medals. Michael Phelps won 8 gold medals in 2008,
I
which
remember
is
that.
incredible. Um, in
Taylor,
2010, yeah,
these the dream team, if you look up the scores that they racked up against other countries,
was it just like dumb?
it's so stupid. Yeah. So the one game, June 28th, 1992, US points 136 to Cuba's 57.
Oh my God. I
Just like
mean,
I'm shocked they even got 57 actually.
me too.
So
Yeah,
kudos to
like
them.
one day you're just like playing a basketball team, and the next day they're like, "Oh, hey, Michael Jordan's here against you. Good luck." And you're like, "What?"
No, when I remember being a kid and playing at the YMCA like the basketball. Every now and then it's like so the other kids will like the other team will have someone that's like crazy good and crazy dominant. It's like nobody wants to guard that guy. It's like nobody
Yeah,
wants to be the guy who like is obviously going to lose the game for you.
yeah,
And I just can't imagine being at, like this Cuba team and be like, so who's got Michael Jordan? Like
yeah,
who's
yeah.
guarding Michael?
Do you want to cover him, or
Do you want
should
Michael
I?
Jordan or do you want Karl Malone or do you
I
want
don't really
Patrick
want
Ewing or do you
Jordan.
want Scottie Pippen? Who do you want to cover today? It's like what a nightmare.
I know this is not news, but man, these guys are tall. Patrick Ewing is 7 feet tall. It's
Yeah,
just
he's
so
huge.
tall.
Yeah.
It's insane. Yeah, so that was a really fun year for America. Um, What else? So just in general, 2012, Gabby Douglas, she's the first African American woman to win the gold medal in gymnastics, which is super exciting. They're in Russia in 2014. They're in Rio in 2016, where Simone Biles comes to stage. She wins 4 gold medals and 1 bronze. Usain Bolt completed the triple triple. He won the 100, 200, and 4x100 relay for the third Olympics in the row. Like, he's just insane. He's so fast,
Yeah.
out of control.
That's what he's known for.
Um, then they were in Pyeongchang, South Korea, and then they were in Tokyo. I think it's super cool of Simone Biles that she withdrew because she was having mental health issues. Um, I think that was a good, you know, thing for her to do to take care of herself. So she did that, but she's back this year. And then in 2022, they were in Beijing. And then this year, of course, they're in Paris. I'll let you know. I'll do a follow-up if anything crazy happens. But I'm following so many Olympics accounts on our Instagram. It's wild. And I'm excited about track, of course. Um, and swimming, Katie Ledecky is back. She's insane. The top 15 records for her events are all her. She's just like out of control. There's also a women's rugby player named Alona Mayer, who I love. She has a great Instagram account. She's super making me super excited about that. And I only know about women. I don't know if that's also what's happening on our algorithm, but um, a woman named Sunny Choi is on our breakdancing team. There's 16 men and 16 women. And Sunny Choi, I watched a little documentary on her. She was a global marketing director at Estee Lauder and quit to be on this breakdancing team, which is really fun for her. And I'm excited
That
to
is
see
pretty
breakdancing. Yeah. Yeah.
sweet.
So that's what's coming up in the next, I don't know, couple weeks when it actually starts. But let's talk about 1996. So, bars. It's 1996. You are a preteen,
I'm a little 12-year-old fars.
little farce. So, lest we start thinking that our times are uniquely turbulent, all times are turbulent. And in the lead up to the 1996 Olympics, a bunch of crazy shit's happening, like in the world. So there's a few things that you have to remember that backdrop this story, and they happen in quick succession. So in August 1992, there's Ruby Ridge, and you know about that, right?
Oh yeah. Yep.
Do you want to say what that is
That was
on the spot?
when the FBI and the Bureau of Tobacco Firearms raided this compound where this white nationalist was living with his
Yeah.
family off the grid. And sure, he's a bad person overall, whatever, but he wasn't actually committing any crimes. It was entrapment.
Yeah.
And they ended up actually killing his wife. I think they might have killed his kid and arrest the guy. Ruby Ridge was basically the precursor and the setup to domestic terrorism as we know it. Like that
Yes.
was the tee up to the Olympic or God, what was it? Timothy McVeigh bombing. Yeah, and all that stuff.
hmm
So
Exactly. Exactly. Thank you. That's exactly right. Because in April 1993 is the Waco Branch Davidian standoff that ended up, killing a bunch of those folks in that cult. In April 1995 is the Oklahoma City bombing. So there's a lot of like domestic terrorism, like you said, and a lot of like tension between the government and people who want to live off the grid. So that's what's happening right now. And so that's in the zeitgeist. There's also one thing that happens right before the Olympics start. On July 17th, 1996, TWA Flight 800 exploded 12 minutes after takeoff. Have you heard about this one?
that's not Lockerbie, is it?
No. So it was flying to Rome from JFK via Paris. So it was headed to Paris for a layover, and it ended up being just like a short circuit in the engine. So the flight took off fine. 12 minutes later, other planes were calling in saying they saw an explosion in the sky, and the burning wreckage was on the ocean. Um, Everyone died. Like almost 300 people died. But in addition to the people on the plane, like, one of the groups on the plane was a group of 16 students and five adult chaperones from the French Club of Montoursville High School in Pennsylvania. And that is inspiration for Final Destination.
No way.
Yeah, which is kind of fun because Final Destination's fun. Because it's like a group of kids going to France, you know,
Yeah.
and then their plane explodes.
It's
So
great. Those movies are awesome. Everybody should see
they're
them.
so good. They're great. I love all of them. And the first time I saw them, I was so scared. I didn't know what to do, but then I was like, I need to face my fear and watch them, and they're great.
When they
They
tied the last one
exactly.
back
They
to the
pinned
first
it
one, I
all
was like,
together.
yeah, I
Oh
was like, I was
my
like,
God.
this is way. You didn't have to do that. Like,
But you did.
we loved it anyways. But man, y'all
Yeah.
really care about us. Thank you, Final
Yeah.
Destination creators.
Yeah. So this is the inspiration for it, which is a terrible tragedy. But
Sorry, really just
no,
fucking nerding out on
it's a
how.
tragedy. I think Andy Warhol's boyfriend was on the flight. A couple other like higher profile people were on it. So definitely a tragedy, but fun that we got Final Destination. But by the time the Olympics start, the investigation is not done, and they think it might be a terrorist attack. Like it isn't, but it's still out there that it could be, you know?
Basically, are you just framing it as like the world is topsy turvy
Yes.
and nobody? Okay, got it.
And no one knows what's going on, you know?
Cool.
So that's like in the background. But the games are in Atlanta, and there's a lot of background reasons to why. But a couple people were like, we really want it to be in Atlanta. They put out the bid. They spent a lot of money like wooing the people who get to vote. It's the 100th anniversary of the modern games. So Athens was like the favorite to get it because, Greece, 100 years, all the things. And Atlanta did the Abraham Lincoln thing and made themselves everybody's second choice, you know. So that's how you win things. So in 1990, it's like 200 people on this committee get to vote on which city, and they vote on like all 10, and then the two that have the least votes are out, and they do it again, and then they do it again, and they do it again until finally it was Atlanta, and they got that in 1990. The games are in Atlanta now. Um, they got voted in. They were everyone's second choice. They wanted the park and Olympics to be open to everyone. They expected bomb threats, but they had a lot of security. They did a training in the airport before with like fake gas, so like there was a bomb in the airport, so everybody was like really ready. Um, Lots of famous people from the 90s were there. The Brian Setzer Orchestra played. That's fun. It's very
I don't know who that
90s.
is.
It's like 90s swing. Remember when
Okay.
everybody like swing in the 90s again
Everybody was
for some
swinging.
reason?
That's all
Yeah.
we were known for.
Um, There's a very on-brand story that Donald Trump was at the Cheesecake Factory and he dropped his wallet, and a kid picked up his wallet and gave it back to him. And to thank him, Donald Trump asked the kid for a $20 bill, and he signed that one.
I mean, I guess that's kind of nice.
He didn't even give him any money for returning his wallet. He took the kid's money and signed it.
Oh, he took. I thought you meant he took
Like,
money out of his own wallet.
no,
Okay,
no, no, no. The kids.
that's funny. That is funny.
It makes sense. So all that's happening, everyone's excited. Atlanta is excited. And so is a security guard named Richard Jewell. And if you have seen this man or heard any of this story, for better or worse, Richard Jewell is Rod Farfa,
Aw,
essentially.
yeah. Poor guy.
And I mean that in a very loving and endearing way.
He kind of looks
Um,
like him too.
well, so Jay Leno is being an asshole this whole time and like talking about Richard Jewell when he's not convicted. But Jay Leno will liken Richard Jewell to the person who hurt Nancy Kerrigan, with the bat or
Yeah.
whatever he hit her with. And the same actor, Paul Walter Hauser, plays both those men in the movies. So it does make sense that those two looked alike. The same actor plays him. And Paul Walter Hauser also plays Lonnie LaLouche, who's the Canadian Farva in Super Troopers 2. So
All right. Well, then
it's a
he
it,
was right.
it's a brand. So he's like a fat guy with a mustache who just like loves being a cop, and that's all he wants to talk about. Like he's so excited about it. He wants to tell you about his training. He wants to tell you how he could stop a bomb. He could do these things, all of that. That's just like his personality. So he's probably like a little annoying, but that's just who he is, you know?
He just likes what he likes, and
Yeah.
we don't have to understand it.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. So, Richard Jewell was born Richard White on December 17th, 1962. His mom, Bobby, and his dad, Robert, divorced when he was 4. His mom remarried a man named John Jewell, which is why he changed his name because he ended up adopting Richard. Things are going well until one day, John Jewell, his stepdad, just leaves. He just abandons the family. He leaves a letter that says, I think I'm a failure. I can't do this anymore, and just leaves. So Richard, who had just started college, moves back in with his mom to help her. And he has some law enforcement jobs. He got fired from 2 of them. One was because he pretended to be like an on-duty officer when he was being a security guard. He had like a side gig as doing security at an apartment building, and he sort of overstepped. So he got in trouble for impersonating an officer. And then he also wrecked a police car because he was kind of a reckless driver. So he always considered
What a
himself law
mess.
enforcement, but he had been fired from a couple law enforcement jobs for
What a
like
dweeb.
things. Yeah,
He
he's a
at
dude.
this point he kind of sounds like that Zimmerman guy.
Like who?
Zimmerman, whatever his name
Oh,
was, the guy was like just a fake police officer and he shot Trayvon Martin, remember?
yes, but like minus the racism. Yeah,
Right. Yeah, I
yeah,
wasn't going with that. I was just being like he's a rent-a-cop who's just like thinks
yeah,
too highly of himself in that capacity.
yeah, yeah. And his goal is to go back into law enforcement and get a police officer job eventually. He's also overweight, which like doesn't help, Like you can be a fat cop if you've been a cop for like 25 years, but like on your first day, you can't be.
I don't know, you can be a fat detective.
That's true. I
They don't
think you
run
have to
after
be there for a couple
anything.
years. That's fair. But he wanted to be like a cop. He wanted to be like a on the ground.
Right.
Um, so during the Olympics, he got a job as a night guard at on a tower at Centennial Olympic Park, which was this big park that was supposed to be like the central park of the Olympics, where there were bands and there were gatherings and there were parties and all the things. He had the night shift, which was like not boring because things went into really, really late and at night. So it wasn't like just quiet evenings, but he had like a very strict um thing that he would do every day. He would like check the perimeter. There was a bench next to him where he would let police officers sit there and he wouldn't let anybody else sit there. He'd be like, that's reserved for the police. Just like a little bit annoying, taking his job a little bit too seriously is how people like had perceived him,
He
you
sounds
know?
very obnoxious. He sounds like an
Yeah.
absolute fucking dweeb.
He's a dweeb, but he's like not a bad guy. He's just a dweeb, you know? Um, so on July 27th, 1996, Richard took a break from work. He usually never took breaks, but he had food poisoning and he had to go to the bathroom. So he went to the bathroom, which is like going to be suspicious later because he never took breaks, but he had food poisoning. Um, he would remember everything in like such intense detail because that was his like, I'm going to quote training, like he was like, I'm trained to remember faces and remember this. And it's like annoying, but also helpful if
Such
you
a
need someone to do those
dork.
things,
He's
you know?
such a dork.
So he remembered that there were some drunks and he was trying to get them to move. It was like 1 o'clock in the morning and there was a band called Jack Mack and the Heart Attack playing. And Richard noticed that there was an Alice pack, which is a very big green army backpack underneath a bench. And they had people leaving their bags, like they do, like all over the place before. But he got closer to it with another guard, and they kind of opened it, like poked at it, and saw that it really was a bomb. So Richard alerts the GBI, which is the Georgia Bureau of Investigation, it's like the state place. And meanwhile, so this is happening, and him and the guy that he's with are trying to get people to leave, but also not cause a panic. So he's like trying to get people to move away from the bench, trying to get back up, trying to figure out what to do next. He's doing everything right. He is trying to get people to move. And meanwhile, someone calls 911 from a payphone and says there's a bomb in the Olympic Park. You have 30 minutes. And this is like one of the dumbest things I've ever heard, but the 911 operator doesn't have the street address for Centennial Park because it's a brand new park. So she has to call around for like 13 minutes to find someone who will tell her the address because she can't send people there if she doesn't have an address.
Kind of wild. It
Wild.
also sounds very like Die Hard.
Yeah, exactly. Like someone's on the phone, they can't do it, everyone's panicking. And so Richard Jewell and another guard are trying to get people to move, but the bomb explodes at 1:20 a.m. and it is a shrapnel bomb. So like the boom, obviously people hear it from all over, but the real damage is going to be in the shrapnel. So people get like, you know, nails and pieces of metal like thrown into their bodies. Only one person dies from the bomb. Her name is Alice Hawthorne. She's 44 years old. She was there with her daughter who was also injured. A cameraman with Turkish radio and television. His name is Melye Uznyol. He was 40. He, quote, survived coverage of wars in Azerbaijan, Bosnia, and the Persian Gulf, but died of a heart attack, running to get coverage of the bombing. So technically, only two people died, but 111 people were very severely injured.
Got it.
Um, So Richard is there, from before the bomb went off and after the bomb went off. He's doing everything right. So he's like, if you can walk, come with me, like getting the people who are okay out of the way so that anyone else can like get help quickly. And he is just being a hero. Like he, got people away from there. He helped people who needed help. He had all this information that he had remembered from when he scanned the perimeter, all those things. And everything that he does is very helpful. And, everything that you should do, what you would expect an officer or a security guard to do. He did all those things, but then people start thinking maybe he's helping too much. Maybe he knows a little too much, and that starts the whole thing. So the two people who deserve blame for this debacle, are reporter Kathy Scruggs and FBI agent Don Johnson. So Kathy was like a reporter for the Atlanta Journal-Constitution. She was like a like a cute female reporter who would like always be at the bar with the police trying to like get them to give her information and tell her things. She was the first person to report that Richard was a suspect. And
Was it true?
It was, but she's going to be in court later, when this is all like, kind of over, and they try to get her to tell her source because someone involved in the case told her at a bar that Richard Jewell, the hero, was the main suspect. And it finds out later that the person who told her this was Don Johnson, the FBI agent in charge. So Don Johnson thinks that Richard Jewell did it and he will not give that up. He won't even look at anybody else, you know? Um, Johnson had, had some like kind of bad moves in when he was in the FBI in New York and ended up in Georgia. And Kathy, her career is going to be destroyed by this. She eventually is going to die by suicide in early September 2001, and Don Johnson is going to die of lung disease. And they both die before this case is closed. Don Johnson dies thinking that Richard Jewell did it, even after he was let go
What was
and
the name
like
of the
didn't do
woman
it.
again?
Kathy Scruggs, Scruggs.
I mean, it's
So
sad.
yeah, it ruined her life, essentially.
Which
But
it probably shouldn't have because she was taking the advice of an agent or an
yeah,
investigating officer.
yeah, he sounds like a real piece of work, this guy,
Yeah,
for
it sounds
sure.
like it was mostly his fault.
Yeah. So, but Richard was like on Good Morning America. He was on Katie Couric. He was like a hero, like in the news in America, all over the world. And But once he becomes a suspect, they make his life like a living hell. The FBI goes to his house. They take all of his things. It takes them 10 hours to go through his house and like take all this evidence out. It takes them 4 minutes later to return it. They just give it back to them in boxes. His poor mother, Bobby, she's not just like a dumb woman. Like she's very smart. She has a career, all these things. But she had a Tupperware collection that she'd been like working on for like 30 years, and they ruined it. They like wrote on it with Sharpies. Isn't that
That's
terrible?
mean.
So mean. And so she ended up suing them and got $2,000 in the end. Um, but Bobby is a great mother to Richard, and he's there to help her, and she's going to be with him during this whole thing. Um, so after they do this raid on his apartment, he lives with his mom. They do this raid. They bring him in, and Don Johnson, the FBI agent, is the one that interviews Richard for the first time. And he does something weird. He does the Miranda rights in the middle of it, which you can't do. you know, he like does it at the wrong time. And at first, Richard is like, I'm here to help. Like, I'm super excited to be with fellow law enforcement and help you find this person. And then he realizes that they are interrogating him, thinking that he did it. And then they do the Miranda rights. And then it's just like, that's going to be part of the reason that Don Johnson's career gets destroyed, as it should be, because he did this in absolutely the wrong way. Richard will call his lawyer, Watson Bryant, who's like a person who he had known at a previous job, like an older man who he had a friendship with. And Watson's going to be in over his head. He's not really a criminal lawyer, but he's his first lawyer. And he's like, stop talking to the FBI right now, you know, as a lawyer would tell you to do.
Right.
When he gets home after his first interrogation by the FBI, Richard Jewell's mom, Bobby, asks him if he did it. He said, no, mom, I didn't do it. And she never asked him again. She believed him, the whole time. Um,
I'd be pissed if my mom even asked me that. Like, what are you talking
I
about? Like,
mean, I know. She's like, can I help? Like, I think she's like, how can I help you, from here on?
yeah. Yeah, it's a tough
But
situation.
she believed him. Um, they are like 100% sure that it's him, and the media loves it. At one point, there's a reporter on TV kind of yelling about it, like this woman in Atlanta yelling about it, and the assistant U.S. attorney calls the attorney general in Atlanta and says, "Get this woman off the air now. She's making this into a scandal that she's like way going overboard." And guess who that woman was?
No clue.
Nancy Grace.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
That
Okay.
was her
Well,
first big thing. And by the end of the year, she'll have her job on court TV and become, be the yeller that she is.
so
Um,
annoying.
yeah. So now people are interviewing Richard Jewell's friends as well, and they are saying things like, yeah, it's weird that he talks about being a police officer so much. Like he does want to be a hero. That is true. So things like that, I think, make it more suspicious, especially because the guy who did it in LA.
Right.
They're just
Yeah.
like, oh,
Yeah. Yeah. He kind of set the precedent.
yeah. So he gets a new lawyer named Jack Martin, who's more of a criminal lawyer to help him. They're making him do things like pretend to make the phone call, like there's a bomb in the park, you have 30 minutes, but like it doesn't match his voice. When he does meet with his lawyer does the thing where he's like, "Is there anything that you want to tell me before we go off, and do this?" Like at the end, and Richard Jewell says, "Yes, I haven't done my taxes in 2 years," which is
Poor guy.
cute. Yeah. Um, the FBI is constantly trailing him. They are at his house. They're listening to his phone calls. Like he has a friend who's in the GBI and he wants his friend to come over because he's like, "Hey, I made a lasagna. Will you come over so we can chat about this?" And his friend is like, "Okay." He comes over, but his friend is wired, so he like can't even trust anyone.
Jeez.
And they like, he orders pizza and they bribe the delivery guy to hold the door open so that they can get pictures of him. They're just like camped outside of his apartment. They're making it, he can't also, he doesn't have a job, So he's like, he doesn't have a job. He's like really trying to figure out like how he's going to live his life now. There's jailhouse informants who are saying that they know that he did it, but all those didn't pan out. And then he also passes a lie detector test. There's just no evidence that Richard Jewell did this. Like there's nothing.
No, it's
Um,
just it's just if you're kind of like an annoying pain in the ass,
yeah,
you're just an easy target. Just
yeah,
don't be an annoying pain in the ass.
yeah, exactly. He's definitely an easy target on this. So, also just to note, he has a best friend named Dave Duchess, and he's often there to help him. Dave Duchess died in 2021 of COVID, but I just want to bring up that he was a good friend to Richard Jewell, like during all of this. So this is only a few months. So the bomb goes off in July. By October, the U.S. Attorney General in Atlanta sends him a letter saying that he is no longer a suspect. Like they don't apologize. They don't they just say you're not a suspect anymore. Um, in 1997, Janet Reno did apologize. She said, quote, "I'm very sorry it happened. I think we owe him an apology. I regret the leak." The leak being the leak that like he was a suspect at all. So
She didn't.
he's
Jan Reno didn't leak it.
no, 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 but like the FBI did.
Right. Okay. She's
Yeah,
apologizing for the FBI. Got it.
yeah, exactly. Um, so Richard tries to get his life back. He does get a job offer in Pendergrass, Georgia, which is like a very, very small town. He becomes a police officer there. Eventually, he'll be deputy sheriff in Meriwether County, Georgia. He gets to be on Saturday Night Live. Norm Macdonald interviews him during Weekend Update and asks him if he also killed Lady Teresa and Princess Diana, or Mother Teresa and Princess Diana, because they just died as well. It's a joke.
Right.
Um, he does sue um, the Atlanta Journal-Constitution, which is the newspaper, because they were comparing him to Wayne Williams, like the guy who killed a bunch of children. Like they were like doing all this stuff. Like Jay Leno apologized to him. Tom Brokaw had to apologize. Like he did make some money from those things, but he had a hard time, meeting women. And like one time he met a woman on a plane and they went on a date and she turned out to be a reporter who just wanted to write an article about him, which is shitty, you know. But he does meet a social worker named Dana and they get married in 1998. They move to a farm. He's deputy sheriff. He's doing great. He's actually feeling healthier. He lost a bunch of weight, but he still has diabetes. And on August 29th, 2007, his wife called him a couple times and he didn't answer and she rushed home and found that he was dead in their bedroom. He had died of a heart attack. He had heart disease, and Richard Jewell died at the age of 44,
I mean, kind
which
of a
is
sad life overall, I would
super
say.
sad. I'm very happy that he met Dana. It sounds like they had a lot of fun. He was very sweet to her. Richard would bring a rose to the spot where Alice Hawthorne was killed by the bomb every year, and Dana continues to do that the years since Richard passed,
It's
which
very
is very
sweet.
lovely. Yeah. So, I mean, he sounds like, he was in the right place at the right time to help, but he was like the kind of guy that was easy to pick on, and obviously they wanted to like get this solved really fast and all of that. So they just like focused in on him and really just like ruined his life for the rest of it.
I mean,
Uh,
he probably wasn't gonna last that long anyways.
yeah,
Looking at pictures of him, he does not look like he's doing good.
he looks good toward the end. He looks thinner when he doesn't have his mustache on. He's a little bit healthier, but it like wasn't enough. He's just like a
Yeah.
guy. He's just like Farva, you know.
He lost 40 pounds.
Yeah. Um, but Fars, what are you thinking right now at the end of the story?
Who actually did it?
Who actually did it? That's a great question. This isn't like, oh God, there's a murderer out there that murders children and killed Casey Anthony's daughter. Like she did it. Like it's not like O.J. Simpson where you're like, there's a murderer out there if you didn't do it, dude. But of course there isn't. But in this case, like there is someone out there who planted this bomb, and guess who it is?
It's gonna be one of those white nationalist groups, right?
1,000%. It's a dude. It's one dude, but he is a white nationalist dude. His name is Eric Robert Rudolph. So Eric Robert Rudolph is mad about everything in his life. He joins the army, but he gets kicked out. While he's there, he just says a bunch of racist shit. He's just like a piece of shit guy. He is mad at the Olympics. Later, he says this because of global socialism. He also hates the official Olympic song was Imagine by John Lennon, and he hates that song so much. Like,
I mean,
okay.
I kind of get it.
And he wanted them to cancel the games, but they did not cancel the games after the bombing. They just amped up security, and people were okay with that. So the FBI, in trying to find this person, actually did some like funny things. One thing that I thought was hilarious is so he was kind of on the run for a while. Eric Rudolph, like lives in the forest. Like he only has a driver's license. He has no other identifying um, information. Like he's very like as off the grid as you possibly can be, literally like starving to death in the woods for a big part of the story. But when he snuck into or like walked into Centennial Park to plant the bomb, he has a goatee and he has like a hat on. And the FBI has like pictures where they think that they might see someone dropping off the backpack and they send them to NASA to enhance them, and NASA can't. Isn't that hilarious?
I mean, yeah. I mean, what I don't think their technology is gonna help in.
But I just
What is
like
it,
imagine just like,
1986?
yeah, they do it in Super Troopers where he's like enhance,
It's
and
just
like
like a
that's not a thing.
pixel.
Yeah. Can't
That's
do
right.
that.
They did do it in Super Troopers. You're right.
Yeah. So he um would do a couple other things. So he's just like basically a white supremacist, nationalist piece of shit who wants to make this global statement. He sets off this bomb. He also will do two other bombs in the next couple of years because they don't find him for years. He bombs a lesbian nightclub. He bombs an abortion clinic, killing a security guard, which is the first murder at an abortion clinic um, in America. And then, but he like really, really is on the run. So he like camps in the woods. He first becomes a suspect in the abortion clinic bombing on February 14th, 1998. So it's 2 years after the Atlanta bombing. He's not a suspect there yet, but he is um, in Alabama for this one because two witnesses, and these two are also heroes. So Jeffrey Tickall and Jermaine Hughes, they see him leaving this place where a bomb went off, and they're like, that guy's weird and suspicious. So they follow him. Like one of them follows him and they get his license plate, and then they were able to find that the car was registered to him, and that's how they get his name for the first time, which is fun that they like went out and did that.
Sorry. What
Um,
year was that?
1998.
Okay, so 2 years later. Okay.
Yeah, so 2 years later. He also does stuff where like he's planting bombs all over, but he remembers where they are. But when they do end up catching him, they have to like make deals with him for him to tell them where all this hidden dynamite is. Because he's like, oh, this is at like the FBI headquarters in Birmingham, or this is like somewhere else. And like at one point he gets scared and he has like a bunch of other bombs and he just like sets them off in a garbage can. So he like there was a chance that he has bombs like in parks and in forests, and someone else could like accidentally set them off.
Right.
Like that's dangerous. So on May 5th, 1998, he becomes the 454th person on the 10 most wanted list. So he's like the 454th person to get on the list. He's on the 10 most wanted list. They're looking for him. They know he's dangerous. And he spends 5 years in the wilderness. He does stuff like he kills animals to live. He has a friend who lives in like who owns like a food store, and he like starts stealing stuff from him and ends up like stealing his car, and his friend calls the police and says like, he's out here in the woods. Eventually they eventually they find him, and when they find him, he kind of like walks out of the woods, and he's like behind a convenience store, like dumpster diving. And in the middle of the night, a cop like sees him and finds him, and and apprehends him, and then they figure out who he is. While they're trying to find him, just as an aside, like how we were saying how a lot of these, people come from families that are fucked up. His brother his brother Daniel recorded himself cutting off his hand with a saw to send a message to the FBI
What was the
while they were looking for
message?
his. I have no idea. Like, just to be like, I don't know, honestly. And then like his hand got reattached because someone went and found it and they put it back on and it was fine. But he was just like this doesn't come from a great background.
Maybe
Like
the
that's so
message,
weird.
maybe the message is if I'm gonna do this to me, imagine what I'll do to you.
I guess, but it's not even the guy, it's his brother.
So weird.
You know what I mean? So they end up, they find him. He would do things like one thing he was like eating salamanders and acorns and like stealing food from people's houses and dumpsters and things. And eventually they catch him, and he goes to court and he is convicted and he is at the ADX Florence Supermax in Florence, Colorado, which I think we've talked about before.
Yeah, it's like
But
the
but
crazy
yeah,
prison.
and that's where Eric Rudolph, I think that he has been there since 2003, like a lot later.
He
Like,
reminds you of Ted Kaczynski.
yeah, yeah, very similar vibe. Like I'm living in the woods. He was caught on May 31st, 2003, which is wildly late, you
Yeah, he
know?
got 7 years.
Yeah. But he like, those were shitty 7 years for him because he really was starving to death in the woods. So,
Yeah.
just like Ted Kaczynski, though, also starving to death in the woods.
Yeah, it's interesting how shitty these guys live and how much pride
Yeah.
they take and how
Yeah.
shitty they live. It's
Yeah.
like, who are
Just a
you
shitty
doing this
guy.
for? Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
fucking losers.
Sort of the worst. So, um, yeah, that's
Sweet.
it. That's the story. That's the 1996 Olympics. And Richard Jewell, I'm glad we can remember him as a hero because he was, even though he's a dork, he did save lives by moving people out of there. And he was just a guy who wanted to be a cop in like a I want to help people way. So,
Tragic existence. I mean,
yeah,
44 years, and
24, so young to die of a heart attack.
in a big, I mean, a not insignificant chunk of that was spent being harangued 24/7 from all
hmm
angles.
Oh, another thing I forgot to say is there was remember when in Japan when the Aum Shinrikyo cults gassed that subway line
Yeah.
in Tokyo, there was something else that they had gassed in like a suburb, and a man had found it in like a weird way, and he was wrongly accused as well. And he reached out to Richard to be like, hey, like this happened to me in the media, just like it happened to you. And Richard went to Japan and did spend some time with him too. He hated the
Oh,
food,
nice.
which is
He
cute.
wait, you said he hated the food?
He did, yeah.
Yeah, he looks like a Pizza Hut kind of a guy.
Exactly. I think he found all the Pizza Huts in Japan.
Yeah.
But that was cool that he got to travel to Japan, and like meet another person who had the same thing happen to him. So, I feel like I don't know, I feel torn about it because he also then now we know about him. And we
Yeah.
wouldn't have if this hadn't happened to him. He would just be, another guy, but we know about him because of this story, um, which is, kind of fun.
No, it's definitely, I mean, it's yeah, like it
Yeah.
adds something to the lore of the Olympics, you know?
Yeah. Exactly. Exactly. So, um, yeah, wild. So there's something wild, I think, every single time there's an Olympics. And I think because, people want to make a statement, people want to like, the world is watching. It's not ever going to be like the dream of like a lovely everyone gets along sporting event. It's always something else happening and they're at times very, very tragic. But I don't know. Hopefully everything goes smoothly this year. We'll see what happens, but we also live in turbulent times, so I don't know.
It
Hoping for the best.
it reminds me of those people who throw like soup or whatever or paint on
Yeah.
art. It's just like
hmm
they just need to get attention in whatever way they need it, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah. And hopefully there's some cool sporting things that are going to happen. I'm excited for gymnastics. I'm excited for this breakdancing to start. Um, yeah, I want to see. Hopefully it's easy to see. Also, I'll keep you posted on how I'm going to watch it. But I also have not received my Team USA sweatshirt yet from Old Navy, so that's a tragedy.
We'll wait with bated breath
Yeah,
for that
wait
to
till
arrive.
I posted something on Instagram because it was someone who's like, how you judge people who wear like anything with the American flag on it, but then during the Olympics, you're like, woohoo,
Yeah,
which is me.
you gotta flex that pride.
Yeah,
Um,
very excited.
exciting. Well, very, very
Yeah,
fun story, Taylor. Fun little series, little four-parter.
yeah. I feel like
Um,
I learned so much, and I feel excited because I feel like I can take these little tidbits of things that I learned about the Olympics with me for the rest of my life.
yeah, and the rest of us will as well, now that we
Yeah,
have it.
yeah.
And probably some really fun, exciting things that are going to be happening here in a little bit with the Olympics starting up in Paris. When does it start?
I oh, that's such a good question. I think the 27th. Um,
It's the end of this month.
yes, at the end of July.
Got
Yeah.
it.
Well, I wonder when the opening ceremony is. It is July 26th at 10:30 a.m. Pacific time.
So
So,
convenient to be watching TV.
I mean, honestly, who knows? Hopefully I can have it on one of my monitors because I do want to see it. Um, and then, stay tuned for 2028 when Fars and I will be broadcasting live from Los Angeles during the Olympics, and that will be very fun.
We're going to be correspondents at that Olympics, I
Hmm.
believe. Yeah.
Yes. So
So
that will be super exciting. Um, we're gonna have wear blazers and American flag ties, and yeah, it's gonna be really fun.
totally. I'm so
I
in.
can't wait for that.
Very in. Um, Sweet. Well, Taylor, thanks for sharing. Is there anything else you want to read off for the folks before we
I have one note from a listener. Nadine wanted me to tell you that she loved the Operation Pistorius and likes the idea of like bumbling spy keepers. So plus
And
one for those.
there's actually quite a few of those.
Yeah, those are so
So
fun.
they might have to be like mini episodes, or like I just string a couple of them together to make it a full
Yeah,
episode, but there's a lot of content there.
yeah. They are really fun. So thank you, Nadine. I agree. That was a fun one.
Thank you.
Cool. Yeah. So please find us on all the social media at Doomed to Fail Pod. Email us, doomedtofailpod@gmail.com if you have any suggestions. And please, please, please tell your friends. Thank you to my friend Jen who left us a review on Apple Podcasts. Really appreciate it. If you can do that for us, that'd be awesome.
Sweet. Thank
Yeah.
you, everyone. Thanks, Taylor.
Thank you. Thanks, Faris.
Yep. Bye.